And I will call to order the City of Laguna Beach Planning Commission meeting for May 15th, 2024. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Goldman,
Here.
Commissioner Whiten,
Here.
Commissioner Dubin,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Kellenberg is absent, and Chair Sadler.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Under other business, we have the introduction of our new city manager, Dave Kiff. Hello, Dave. Welcome to
Hi there,
Laguna Beach.
Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you. Thanks for the welcome. My 8th day on the job. Who's counting? I've enjoyed being here. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but just looking forward to getting to know you folks better and certainly getting to know the community more. I spent 23 years of my life here up until 2018, and I'm happy to be back.
Great to have you.
Thanks
Dave,
for all the good work you guys are doing.
yeah, Mr. Kiff was the former city manager for the city of Newport Beach.
Yeah, for 9
And-
years.
Yeah, and
22 years up there.
had read about that and found it interesting that you were living here in Laguna Beach while working up there in Newport. But
It was great to live here and drive up there and work and come back here to home.
Great. Well,
It's a great
welcome.
place to be home.
Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Now there's no escape.
No escape. I know. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next order of business is public communication. This is a period of time where any member of the public may come up and speak to the Planning Commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, but under our general purview. So if there's anybody in the audience who would like to make a public communication tonight, please step forward. Seeing none, I will close public communication and we will move on to our consent calendar. The consent calendar tonight just is one item, and it's the approval of the April 17th, 2024 Planning Commission draft minutes. Are there any members of the public who would like to pull that consent calendar item? Are there any commissioners who would like to pull that item? Will somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar? I move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
and Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our public hearings. Item 6.1 is the applicant is the City of Laguna Beach, and this is regarding the Main Beach Park and Marine Safety Headquarters proposed improvements. And this item is requested to be continued to a later meeting. I will open the public hearing if anybody would like to speak just on the continuance, the proposed continuance of this item. Seeing none. Any commissioners have any comments regarding that continuance? I have none. Okay, will somebody like to make a motion to continue that item to the June 5th, 2024 meeting?
I move that we continue case number design review 24-0311 and coastal development permit 24-0312 until our June 5th, 2024 regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
and Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Just taking a short pause here to see if Commissioner Whiten's having an issue with her iPad. Well, actually, I think we can move forward on this item as well. Item 6.2 was going to be the determination for general plan consistency with the fiscal year 2024-2025 capital improvement program. And I believe we might have some staff feedback on that particular item.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Tonight's item for the general plan consistency findings, we are asked to be continued because there's a particular item in the CIP, which was the enclosed lifeguard tower installation. And unfortunately, just due to a numbers issue, two of the members of the body would have to recuse themselves because of their proximity to the projects, leaving only two members on the dais. So we have a quorum issue. And then the other issue being, we considered a rule of necessity situation when you have conflicts of interest, but unfortunately, when one of the absences is due to a non-conflict issue, as we have here, only 4, that rule doesn't apply. So there's no way to address that item tonight. And then from a practical perspective, it doesn't make sense to only separate that one item, address the remaining ones, and then at another date, have to renotice, just do that one. So the preference would be to continue the whole item tonight. So all CIP can be considered at one time by both the commission and the council.
Thank you. Do we have a date that it's proposed to be continued to?
Yes, a request is for June 5th.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to continue that to our regular June 5th meeting?
Move to continue this agenda item to our regular June 5th, 2024 meeting.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
and Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We will be moving on to our next item, item 6.3. And this is design review number 24-0797. And we will have a staff presentation by Anthony Vieira.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item 6.3 is a modification to a prior design review and variance approval for the remodel of an existing commercial building located at 401 Glenary Street. The approved remodel by Farmers and Merchants Bank is currently underway with construction work ongoing. In February of last year, the Planning Commission approved a design review and variance application for building and deck additions and exterior building alterations. The Planning Commission's approval was conditional, with a few aspects of the design subject to final approval by a Planning Commission subcommittee consisting of Commissioners Dubin and Whiten. The final design was revised in accordance with the subcommittee's determinations. Shown here in the rendering is the design that was presented to the Planning Commission in February of last year. Again, because the subcommittee made a few of the final design selections, the current baseline is a little different than what is shown. Most notably, the laser cut panels were approved with a beige finish, while the exterior garage walls would be painted dark bronze with vines allowed to climb on that surface. And we will take a closer look at these color changes on the following slides. And next, we'll talk through the applicant's proposed modifications. Starting with the east elevation. One of the most significant changes involves a material change from the large format Swiss Pearl fiber cement panels to a smooth coat stucco in a gray color finish to match the prior approval. Control joints would be added to match the irregular panel of the Swiss Pearl panels. Note that the stucco would wrap around the 3 of the 4 sides of the building to match the locations where Swiss Pearl was to be applied. Other changes along the east elevation include new windows to create a vertical ribbon of windows along an interior stairwell and a new termination point for the garage wall that wraps around the building corner. And again, note that the beige finish at the laser cut panels, dark bronze garage walls, and the vine treatment were approved by the Planning Commission Subcommittee and are therefore not a part of the current application. Those areas are outlined in red on the bottom image on the screen. At the north elevation facing Laguna Avenue, the architect proposes to omit the span of laser cut metal screen above and below the second floor windows. Dark bronze metal panels are proposed in their place to match the storefront. Another notable change involves a redesign of the new parapet wall to reduce the extent of this feature along the west elevation shown here and the south elevation, which we will take a look at next. The furred wall that connects the parapet along the west corner of the building adjacent to Laguna Avenue is proposed to be widened as shown. The canopy over the garage entrance is proposed to receive 4 additional support columns close to the building wall for structural purposes. At the south elevation, a new canopy over the ATM and entrance is proposed to be omitted. You can also see here where the parapet wall would terminate near Glenary Street to the right instead of continuing to wrap around the full perimeter of the building. As discussed in the staff report and presented in the draft resolution for your consideration and adoption, staff believes that the project can be found to satisfy the design review criteria. Among other findings, staff believes that the proposed modifications will retain the remodeled building's well-articulated appearance. And although the project reduces articulation at the south and west elevations by eliminating portions of the projecting parapet wall and a canopy, these elevations are not readily visible from surrounding streets, and reduced visual interest and articulation at the secondary building elevations is generally appropriate. The draft findings presented for your consideration also note that the smooth coat stucco with control joints is an appropriate substitute material for the fiber cement panels to maintain the visual effect of the irregular paneling. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution approving the project this evening. That will conclude the staff presentation, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so Anthony, the recommendations made by the subcommittee are deemed approved.
That is correct.
And
yes.
so the other changes, were they made as a result of the recommendations by the subcommittee, or were they made for other reasons?
The changes that are part of the request before you this evening are unrelated to the subcommittee's determinations, and the applicant is prepared to explain the rationale for each of the proposed
Okay.
changes.
Okay. I'll wait for that.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Dubin?
I think minor for the applicant. Thank you.
Commissioner Whiten?
I went out to see if I could see a sample of the stucco, and much to my wonderment, the entire building has been stuccoed.
Oh,
That's a big sample.
Oh. But there's no color sample out there.
oh, that's
And
interesting.
it's not integral colored stucco. So I have to say that was shocking.
Maybe a question for the applicant, whether or not, I don't know if the stucco is proposed to be painted or if it's going to be the color that it is.
Well, if it is to match, we'll see. If it is to match the Swiss pearl, at least it looks in these renderings like it should be a little grayer. Anyway,
And I forgot to ask, if there are there any commissioner disclosures regarding this item?
No.
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 Okay, is the applicant or applicant team here tonight for this?
Oh, man.
Okay, so if we have any questions regarding the reasoning for these changes? And any other questions regarding the color? Do you know, can you answer any of those questions, Anthony?
Yes, if I may, Chair, I can make an attempt. I did have a brief conversation with the applicant who may be running a little late this evening. With the stucco application, they did proceed at their own risk and without any city authorization to do so, to start installing the smooth coat stucco finish. It does appear to be a white stucco. And so my understanding is that it's not an integral stucco color. The intention was to paint over that smooth coat stucco with the gray paint that would have matched the approved color for the Swiss Pearl fiber cement panels. The applicant did have, I know, compromises of sorts to present to the Planning Commission, and I don't know that I want to present those on their behalf since they were not part of the current application. Well,
So Anthony, question then, since they're not here to answer those questions and they've already gone ahead and done this work without approval, because we'd already approved the previous design that they presented many months ago at this point. Where does that leave us exactly as far as options? Maybe David, I don't know if that's a question for you or.
Yeah, and as a extension of that question, George, would it be an option to continue this to later in the meeting to give the applicant a chance to get here?
Exactly. That's what staff was about to propose to the
Okay.
chair, that if we know that the applicant is going to attend and perhaps are running later, they're stuck in traffic, that we move this item to the back of the agenda.
My continuing question though is, since they've done this work without approval, I mean, what options do we have at this point? I mean,
The commission still has the option as if the work had not been conducted. In other words, if the entire building was stuccoed or half of the building, the action before you tonight is the request to stucco the building, paint the building, et cetera. So in other words, if the commission does not agree with what is being proposed for plan, then the commission can take that option.
it seems like they jumped the gun though. They should have, before they went ahead with that, should have come and had this meeting before us so that we can understand the reason why. And it feels like that now we're just in a position of, they're asking for forgiveness so they can continue forward. It seems a little cart before the horse to me.
I will just add in agreement with what David said. So essentially tonight you would be acting as if it was not repainted or restuccoed. And to the extent that whatever action the commission took tonight, if as the building stands, it's in violation of either entitlements or code, then you would just have to, the city would just proceed under separate channels, for example, code enforcement. Or if the building exists in violation of entitlements, there's mechanisms to address that as well. But tonight you would treat it as if they had not gone forward with what they did.
Well, I would suggest, and I'll ask the consensus of the commissioners, but that we trail this item to the end of the other public hearings tonight. Because otherwise we're just speculating. I mean, I had a question of, why the proposed change from the fiber cement board
I think we all did.
to stucco in the first place. And, and not that it's inappropriate necessarily, but that was just going to be a question to ask. So I don't know. Who are we looking for to potentially attend the meeting tonight? Do you know?
Tobin White, the architect,
Okay.
will be attending. I do not see him in the room at this
Okay.
moment.
All right, well, let's,
We do need a motion to move the action.
okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to trail this item to the end of our public hearings tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yes.
And Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so just so the public understands that this item will be trailed to the end of our agenda items here tonight.
And just a question. So if the applicant doesn't show, do we just continue it for another meeting? As opposed to voting?
That would be within the purview of the commission. So for example, if you found that you needed further information to be able to decide either way, you could continue the item, that's within your purview. If you felt you had the information you needed to approve, you could do that as well. I believe the recommended action for tonight is approval. So if there was going to be a denial, we'd probably request that we have to bring it back for a future meeting for a resolution of denial. But you
Right.
could take whatever action you need to if you felt you had the evidence and facts.
I again recommend that we revisit that later this evening. I can understand maybe how the applicants got kind of thrown a little bit of a curveball by not knowing that we were continuing at least the other item that was not anticipated to be continued. So maybe was not prepared to be here right at this time. Unless that's them. Okay, so we made the motion, it was seconded, and did we vote actually on it? Yep, okay. So we're gonna move on to our next item. That will be item 6.4. And this is what is the address is 30806 Coast Highway, and case number DR 240673 and CUP 23-2087. And Jessica Mendoza, Assistant Planner, will be presenting this item tonight.
I did meet with the applicant on site.
As did I.
I did as well.
Me too.
Okay, there's your disclosures. Okay, and staff, you may move ahead with your report when you are able to.
Good evening, Chair Sadler and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jessica Mendoza. I will be presenting item 6.4. This is a request for approval of design review 24-0673 and conditional use permit 23-287. The proposed design involves exterior modifications to Le Petit Palais, formerly known as the Laguna Beach Lodge, an existing hotel building located in the CN Commercial Neighborhood Zoning District on the east side of Coast Highway. The proposed design modification are as followed. There are facade changes with fresh colors for the exterior walls and trim, updated site and exterior lighting, new wood cladding, which would be applied as an accent at the second floor balcony above the lobby area only. The applicant is enhancing the exterior courtyard spaces with new hardscape features, improved lighting, new landscape within the interior of the hotel that consists of a blend of low-level plants and ground cover. Also with the application, there is a proposal to remove 2 plant species, a total of 32 plant species in total of those 2. And there's also a proposed remaining to include 14 Mexican fan palms, 1 sugar gummy eucalyptus, 1 Norfolk island pine, which we can refer back to the landscape plan for more information. Other site improvements include a pool enhancement with new fencing, new pool flooring in a coral stone that perimeters around the pool area, and outdoor flooring is also going to be, it's proposed in a herringbone and square tile design, and the remodeling of the existing scullery kitchen. Another item, furthermore, the applicant also seeks approval for a conditional use permit enabling the service of alcohol, beer, and wine to guests, which is facilitated by a Type 70 restrictive service license. Staff has thoroughly evaluated the applicant's proposal and is confident that it meets all necessary criteria for the approval. Following the publication of the agenda and staff report, staff has identified that the most recent plan sheets A2.2 and 8.82.3 were not included in the report as part of the attachment 3. The plan sheets attached to the supplemental show that the existing elevated deck is to remain in its existing dimensions. The plans attached to the staff report had shown an enlargement of this deck, which is no longer a part of the proposed project. Both staff report and draft resolution analyze the project without addressing any proposed expansion of the deck. And since that portion of the project had already been omitted by the applicant. The project does not require approval of a CDP because the proposed action is considered exempt development pursuant to the Laguna Beach Municipal Code in section 25.07.008, coastal development permits. The proposed project is limited to building and site improvement, which is associated with the continued operation of a 39-room hotel and one owner's unit in conjunction with a conditional use permit to allow the service of alcohol, beer, and wine to hotel guests with a Type 70 restrictive service license. The project does not involve an intensification of use. In addition, just to correct the record, there was a typo within the agenda for this item. The property is not in the exclusion area. However, it is exempt for the reason I stated in the slide and as presented in the staff report and resolution. The subject property has been formally determined to be ineligible for listing in the California Register or the Laguna Beach Register and is therefore not considered a historic resource as defined by CEQA and the city's historic preservation ordinance. The historic assessment, which is attachment 4, provides details on the determining factors as to why the building is not a historic resource. The project, staff believes that the project is in compliance with the design review criteria and findings. The proposed modifications will accentuate its mid-century modern character of the building, and the exterior modifications will bring great visual interest to the building. Staff recommendation is to approve design review 24-0673, conditional use permit 23-8087, subject to the discussion provided in the staff report and the findings that are attached in the resolution. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Any staff questions? Commissioner Dubin, Commissioner Whiten?
We did have correspondence questioning whether this was subject to a CDP. And just to be clear, before we start the public hearing, this does not require a CDP because there's no intensification of use.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I looked back at the CDP section. I didn't see anything about exclusion zone. Where was that even mentioned?
That was actually mentioned on the agenda on the website.
Okay.
But on the staff report, it does state that it was exempt from a CDP.
And I guess it doesn't really apply, but just for my general knowledge, what would this exclusion zone mean?
Thank you for the question, Chair. The categorical exclusion areas are areas in the city where the city's CDP or coastal development permit provisions do not apply. In this case, the project was simply exempt from the CDP requirements by virtue of the scope of work that's being proposed.
And those exclusion areas that do exist within the city would be located in such a way that they're outside of the Coastal Zone Act area, or what, for example, what is an exclusion zone within the city?
They're generally located at some distance from sensitive coastal resources. So some areas of the village that are some distance away from Coast Highway and the city's coastline. Generally, these are low-lying areas in the city, so not the hillsides, which in some cases have close proximity to habitat as well. That's also an area where the CDP provisions do govern.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Yeah. Quick question. Hotel going to be called the Laguna Beach Lodge?
No.
That's what's on the plans, but it didn't really state anywhere how it's branded, identified. I don't know. Is that a question for the applicant, or do you guys know?
I think it's Le Petit Palais.
Where I didn't see it.
So
Where was that?
So on the staff report, based on what the applicant had stated, that the new name will be Le Petit Palais.
I missed it. Where is it?
And the
Oh, there it is, right in
applicant
front.
had submitted an application for review
Thanks.
for new signage. And so that signage will be reflecting
that-
on that new.
That was going to be the next question, is how it's identified in signage, what their name is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant team here? You could please come up to, I don't know, either the podium or the table, whichever you're more comfortable at.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jan Van Dijs, and I'm the designer for the project.
You'll have 5 minutes. You can just either give us a general, you can speak, or you could just be there for questions, whatever you
I'm
want.
happy to speak. We think this is a wonderful project, and we've worked really hard to present something that we think will be beneficial to the community, but respectful to the original architecture. The hotel was built in the early 60s. It was pretty much a family motor lodge, and in the extent of the design and the architecture that we did, we tried to maintain the integrity of that design, the pitch of the roofs, the elements and the details of the mid-century modern architecture that we thought were interesting and unique to this property. As Jessica discussed, we did propose several modifications to the structure, but they were select and isolated. The opening of the balconies on the second story, the cladding on the balcony above the lobby, and the expansion of the one deck to equal the existing stone-clad structure by the swimming pool. Other than that, to the existing, we are basically working with what we feel are modifications since the original design of the hotel. The pool fencing is not original. There is not much left of the original railing. So these things are being redesigned to be consistent with overall what we would consider a modern interpretation of mid-century. The entire project, and I have the materials if anyone is interested, the entire project in terms of site work, as we discussed, was coral stone, cladding in the pool and on the pathways. There'll be a complete ADA upgrade to allow those pathways to have compliant ADA rooms and be fully compliant for our requirements. There really is going to be, I think it's going to be a lovely hotel, and I think it's going to be a lovely presentation to the street. We were very cognizant of in terms of the color palette and how we wanted to present it, both in rich layers of landscaping, but also we wanted to present the street face very much as it has been since it was built, which is a mid-century modern, clean white. But as you enter in the courtyard, we went with a very rich color to create really a little more drama, maybe a little more comfort and presentation. So that was reflective you can see in our renderings and in our intent of design. But other than that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. I'm still a little confused about when I was out there Friday meeting with you, and I wasn't sure if it was you or the construction manager that I was speaking with before you got there. I was led to believe that you were going to expand that walkway area, the elevated walkway area between.
Yes, we are.
You are or you aren't?
We are.
Oh, no.
If I may clarify,
Okay.
Chair, that is not part of the current application before you.
Okay. So I'm really confused now because the original plans that we had that were part of our package here tonight showed an expansion of that, correct?
That is correct. An earlier iteration of the project plans included a proposed expansion of that elevated deck that's in a centralized area of the property overlooking the pool deck. That was subsequently removed from the scope of work. At this time, we have not received a new application to newly propose an expanded deck area. It was not part of the noticed project description for the current project and was not analyzed by staff for this evening's hearing. And it also was not staked, and therefore the Planning Commission would not be able to approve that elevated deck addition if it were to be proposed by the applicant for the first time this evening. It is not
Okay.
part of the project.
So even if we were potentially open to it, it's not an option for us at all tonight to just add that into the project.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
And I apologize, I missed it. We intend on doing it as a separate application.
Okay. And I don't know if you can really answer this either, but there was a little confusing about the landscaping and the number of trees to remain and removed. Because the way the staff report stated at one point was it was referring to trees over 20 feet high. And then tonight on the presentation, there was a couple of species that were specifically talked about. There was a number that far exceeded that of being removed. So I'm assuming that those are all under 20 feet high.
That's correct.
Okay. So at this point, basically all the trees are to be removed except for 16 are to remain.
On the inside of the property, I believe Jessica didn't address, I don't believe we're touching the trees on the street side of the property. Those are all to remain as
Okay.
well. So only on the inner courtyard.
Okay. And then and this is not really part of our review, but the scullery kitchen or whatever that's proposed to be modified or updated.
Yes.
What's that going to be used for? Are you actually going to be cooking meals
No,
and
no, no.
room
we won't.
service?
It would be like a breakfast service. If you go to a hotel and you would have maybe breads and yogurts and cold, no hot meal presentation. Basically, it would be for a light breakfast service in the morning. So granola, cereal, maybe these types of things. So it's strictly prep and scullery. So dishwashing and food prep. That's it.
Okay. And the request for the, I believe it was type 70 liquor license or whatever, that would be purely for
Hotel
on-site consumption for guests, no, no.
It's restricted. It's not intended for off-site, only hotel guests, room service, and general
by the pool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah. The number of trees are being removed, which will improve people's views. Have you met with the neighbors and are the neighbors familiar with what's going on with this project?
The neighbors aren't very shy in this neighborhood. They've come by quite a bit. So I've met with several of them. I think to the extent of our presentation to the neighborhood, we determined day one that we were not going to affect, but try to improve what they see. So we are not changing. So it's an arms, these two arms. So we're not adding lighting. We're not adding windows. We're not adding doors to the three facades that face the house, the perimeter neighbors. We are cleaning up. There's some existing pipe work and things of old renovations. We're cleaning that up and painting and kind of hopefully all we're doing is making their presentation better. We are resealing, restriping, re-landscaping the front and the parkway along the front. So I haven't heard anything from any of the neighbors that I've met that has been negative, but we would be happy to listen.
You're coming for the sign in the future. That's a separate submittal.
I think Jessica could speak specifically on how that's being presented, but we have prepared a signage package for submittal. Yes.
Okay, and is it just replacing the existing sign, that monument sign that's out?
We are
Coast Highway?
Yes, we are going to rebuild or basically reskin the existing monument sign. And there is some signage on the building, which is mostly shown in our presentation, our 3D presentation. It's not an overwhelming amount of signage. I think it's appropriate.
No neon.
No neon. You guys are pretty tough on your signage.
That was a joke.
We're not.
Thank
That's
you.
hilarious. Commissioner Gibbon.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I was thinking about, I know we met the other day, but I was thinking about the some of the rock facade that's part of the original building, and I'm assuming at some point that was not painted white. Have you given any consideration to potentially stripping the white paint off of that to add another sort of warm texture to the building?
I think we would consider it, but my study of it is it's cast concrete. It's not natural.
Oh, it's not
stone.
natural stone.
So I don't think it's going to clean up very well.
Oh, okay. Well, I was making an assumption that it was like flagstone or something.
No, it's not. I think if it were natural stone, we would be very open to it. I just don't. I think we peeled the paint off. You wouldn't like it. And you'd say paint it back.
Yeah, or have it faux painted or something, right? Okay. Any consideration to some bike racks at all? Was that ever in the mix down?
No, it's not. And I don't think that we would be opposed to bike racks. I think we would just have to find a place that would be suitable for them on site.
Because a lot of people, even if they're traveling, they're bringing bikes with them, and Laguna is known for people riding bikes quite extensively. So I was just.
So my response is we'd be happy to work with staff to find some suitable locations.
And my only other question, I know that we've talked a lot about doing as much concealment as possible of parking that's adjacent to, a major roadway. And I know there is some landscaping out in front of on the street side of the project. Is there any, I know you're doing some reconfiguration out there, but is there any consideration to some additional, maybe a little bit taller plant material that might kind of conceal, the parking lot, which is sort of, the obvious eyesore of the project?
I don't think we would be opposed to it. I think there would be some limitations in maintaining the existing trees, which have a large root structure, and what we could get to grow around, going around. But if that were a condition, then we would address it.
I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't want you to feel.
I have one. I thought you might ask. This qualifies for. Oh, yeah, I'm on. I think I'm on. Yeah. This qualifies public art.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We have not finalized the public art portion yet.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Are you doing that versus the In Lieu of fund?
We want to do it.
Okay.
But we've interviewed several people and we just haven't hit the right mark yet.
Okay.
It's tough.
Because one of the things that, at least I'm concerned about is that, the public art component can sometimes be an afterthought or, oh, we'll just stick it there or whatever, instead of actually designing in a location for a piece. So it's more integrated into the design.
So agreed. And that is an issue. We have limited access for public specifically because of the way and the elevation and the entry and the pool wall. So there's limited opportunity for location of that. And to some extent that makes it a little more of a complicated process because it is like basically right there. So I can say we haven't resolved it, but not for lack of trying. We would like to do it well.
So the intention is to do a piece of public art versus pay the in lieu of fee.
The intention is to do a piece of public art in lieu of paying the fee.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
I'm good.
Did you read through the historic assessment and do you agree with their conclusion?
I do. But prior to the historic assessment, we were concerned that we didn't know what the assessment would determine. So we were very conscious at all levels of design to make sure that we were consistent, that if it was determined, we felt that we felt confident that we would still meet the criteria as a restoration.
And looking at some of the older postcards and photographs, it appears certain areas have been modified over time, that particularly that shed roof over the entry area. At one point, it looked like it had some sort of cantilever steel elements or something that were supporting it, and it's that's been changed over time. So, okay, I'm just curious about that because the building is a couple years older than I am. So, no, it's historic as far as I'm concerned. But no,
Dinosaur.
So are you, Ken.
okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Good evening, Chair, Planning Commissioners. My name is Jordan Sisson. I'm a land use attorney here speaking on behalf of Local 11, some of which are the workers who are here speaking on their item. As you heard earlier from one of your colleagues, we did submit a very short 2-page comment letter about this project. And we respectfully disagree in terms of staff's interpretation. That's not an intensification. I think this is really a good example of some of the problems with project piecemealing and the city's major remod definition. As your staff report identifies, there was 2 building permits issued in 2023 that allowed for the entire renovation of all the rooms. Clearly, this site was a motorhome, as you heard. As the Coastal Commission has identified, older motels and older structures tend to be lower cost and moderate cost accommodations, which is protected and even encouraged not only under the Coastal Act, but under your own LCP. Now, you have a design review as well as a CUP. So you've got a renovation of all the rooms. You've got an intensification of alcohol use. You've heard that they're now planning on providing food service for the mornings. You know, it seems to me, I think to most people, that you've gone from a motel, which typically provides affordable rates, access to the coast, into essentially a hotel. That's an intensification. Unfortunately, this gets piecemealed, and you heard it even today, right? You had 2 building permits. Now you've got these entitlements. Now you've got a future submittal application coming in the future. This is all, whether you want to call it a project or related projects, these all have cumulative impacts that need to be analyzed collectively. Here, every room has been changed. And it's a gorgeous design. I must admit to that. Looks fantastic. Really, I saw the effort in trying to be very historically sensitive. So I want to give you kudos as a fan.
Try to address us.
Apology. So I want to compliment the applicant for trying to have a nice design, but unfortunately, this appears to be taking away potentially lower cost accommodations. Our records showed that rooms were down as low as $99 as of 2012. Now, that's important because the Coastal Commission determined based off 2019 rates, about $130 would be lower cost. So you can see how once upon a time, you had lower cost accommodations, you've had this intensification, and now you're going to probably have higher cost. That comes at the expense of the community and access to the coastal zone. Again, this is in the Coastal Act, Public Resource Code 30213, as well as your land use element, goal 6, and your policy action 6.2 and 6.2.2. We would respectfully request you to deny the project at this stage until the entire project's looked at, as well as just clarify any appeal rights for non-property owners within 300 feet of the site. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner comments. Anybody in particular want to start?
I'll start.
Commissioner Goldman?
So I live in South Laguna. I've driven by this hotel, I don't know how many times, 2, 3 times a day. I've never really noticed it. When I walked in, I was shocked at how charming it is. I think the renovation put forth from the applicant is very thoughtful, very high quality. And I am familiar with the operator of the hotel. I've seen at least a half a dozen of their properties. I've actually met with them. They are a very good outfit. I think this is going to be a great addition to the city. I think it's being done very well. I think the rooms, everything is very thoughtful. And it's keeping in concert, I think, with what the hotel is. I respectfully disagree with the last person who spoke. It is not turning it into a hotel. This is a charming little motel. And I think it's going to be great for the city and fully support it.
Commissioner Whiten.
I would say exactly the same thing as Commissioner Goldman. I think it is a huge upgrade to the rooms that are available in Laguna. It's a different type of room that we don't currently have available in Laguna. It has a beachy, relaxed feeling, and it really stays very true to the existing character of the motel. In fact, it's going to accentuate it and make it feel like it, it's more authentically a mid-century building. I can't really add anything to what Commissioner Goldman said. I support the project.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments. Whatever was going on in 2012, being almost 12 years ago, everything has changed. Everything is cost factors on everything, including construction materials, has gone up. And every time, there's a remodel of a existing hotel or motel in this town, and I'm going to cite the ranch as an example, the rates that were there prior to that extensive remodel are way in the past. I know that because I know a lot of people used to stay there. So I do disagree with some of the comments by the speaker in terms of this being turned into a hotel. It's not a hotel. It's you don't access the rooms from inside, so it still would be classified as a motel or a travel lodge or whatever. So I think the applicant has done a great job in terms of staying true to the mid-century character of the building. I think it's as I toured it the other day, it was certainly in need of a lot of attention, which it's now getting. And I think it's going to be a real asset to the community. My only other comment is that I can make the CEQA findings class 1 exemption for this project. So I'm going to be in support.
Yeah, let me just start off by saying I am as well. This hotel was the original construction started in 1960. So we're talking about 64 years ago. It's in need of some work. I do engineering. As I was walking around the building, there are some structural elements regarding that shed roof over the open space of the entry, where there's some pretty severely dry rotted beams that are going to need to be replaced. But what's being proposed here, it's not an expansion of the footprint of the building or the structure, other than what may come in the future, which is a relatively modest expansion of a certain deck walkway area. The city has its own rules and analysis regarding what constitutes a major remodel. And, generally speaking, it's talking about changing and removing major structural elements, the wall framing, the roof framing, the floor framing. And none of that's really happening with this project. Interior renovations to the room, where the structural walls are not being moved around, but you're, kind of gutting and redoing the interior walls and, redoing drywall that and electrical and plumbing, that doesn't constitute moving into that major remodel. area, you know, in a building of this age is going to have an extensive building permit history. I mean, to just re-roof it and add new shingles, or, you know, how many times has that happened over the years? And, you know, that those kind of things require building permits. And so that just the building permit history doesn't really cross that threshold either. It doesn't, I don't see any additional negative impacts to the surrounding neighbors or neighborhood. The lighting that's being proposed is modest and I think acceptable for a motel like this. As the applicant architect stated, there's no additional windows or openings facing the neighbors. You know, I walked around the entire building. The back of this building, which is, it's down substantially below the homes up above, but it's kind of a mess right now with all the piping and exterior stuff that's going on there. So this is going to be a significant cleanup and improvement of this building, and I just think it's going to be an improvement. It's going to be beneficial to the city and the neighborhood. If anything, it's going to improve the landscaping. As I was walking around, you know, there are a number of trees that are being proposed to be removed. Right now, it has a pretty tropical feel with a lot of palm trees. But I'm sure the neighbors that are behind are, if anything, their views towards the coast are going to be improved by this project. So again, I'm fully supportive of it. So and I also agree with the CEQA exemption. I also agree with the historic assessment, you know, which went into a lot of detail of figuring out the history of this building, you know, tracking down, you know, and discussing at some length about the original developers and designers of this project. And the bottom line was that it didn't meet the threshold to be considered a historic resource. So again, I'm supportive of it, and if somebody would like to make a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 23-2087, approving design review 24-0673 and conditional use permit 23-2087 located at 30806 Coast Highway, and finding said action exempt from CEQA.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yes.
And Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is a 14-day right of appeal to the city council with anybody who does not agree with that decision. Thank you. Okay, I'll give staff a second here to change over. This next item will be the Hotel Laguna at 425 South Coast Highway, design review 22-2304 and variance 24-0690.
Thank you, Chair Shadler. Just one second while we're loading the Zoom. It seems to be
Take all the time you need.
delayed. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, this is a request for design review 22-2304 at Hotel Laguna, which is located at 425 South Coast Highway. The property is located along South Coast Highway, just south of Laguna Avenue, and is in the downtown specific plan area and specifically in the Central Bluffs district. The city records indicate that the property is developed with a 68-room hotel with restaurants, conference facilities, commercial retail spaces, and on-site valet parking. The Planning Commission last reviewed the project on March 6, 2024, and also considered recommendations from the Heritage Committee at that time. During its discussion, the Planning Commission provided comments and directed the applicant to incorporate additional items and exterior changes to restore features on the building. Overall, the Planning Commission requested that a more comprehensive plan be provided for all the elevations, or specifically the Coast Highway and Laguna Avenue elevations, as well as consider the Rose Garden in the plan. The planter landscaping at the northeast corner was recommended to be removed. It was also recommended to install wood windows and doors on the street level and in the commercial storefronts. It was recommended that the windows be changed to a lighter color and investigate restoring additional historic features like moldings, pilasters in the caps, storefront details, the shield or crest artwork on the Coast Highway elevation, restoring features like the weather vane finials and the spire, restoring Juliet balconies, and also considering operable windows at the corner street elevation. After holding the public hearing, the Planning Commission unanimously continued the item for another meeting. The project that is before you tonight includes additional restoration features. The applicant has primarily incorporated everything that was requested from the Planning Commission at the last hearing, with the exception of the installation of the Juliet balcony and the fire escape enclosure on the Laguna Avenue sides. Details for each elevation are provided in pages 20 to 22 of the staff report, but in summary, the plan is now more comprehensive. The corner planter was removed and a landscape plan provided. Wood windows and doors are now proposed along the street level. The spire is proposed to be restored on top of the tower, and there are operable windows at the corner. I know the applicant will go into a little bit more detail on each of these proposed features. Additionally, the project has been expanded to also include restoration of the Rose Garden facade, and it includes doorway restoration of the archways along the main hotel lobby corridor on the interior of the structure. The proposal today includes two different paint alternatives for the council or the commission's consideration. During its review in October, the Planning Commission directed the applicant to provide a revised color scheme for the building. They have proposed two schemes. Scheme 1 includes a blue sapphire awning color with pebble gray windows and doors, and Scheme 2 includes terracotta awning colors. Per the recommendation of the Planning Commission, as noted, the applicant is proposing lighter window and door trim colors. These are each identified in the staff report and also detailed in each of the schemes. Scheme 1 includes the pebble gray window and door colors with the blue sapphire awnings, and Scheme 2 includes the gunmetal window and door color consist with the terracotta awnings. The applicant did select, as you can see on the screen, there is the cratering results from the paint analysis in the historic assessment. These two colors were selected to be most like those cratering colors, the third and fourth color that are consistent with the window sash samples. The applicant is proposing to restore the spire atop the cupola based on photographs from the 1930s. The spire will be constructed 14 feet above the existing cupola roof and will measure just 87 feet above the lobby finish floor. Because this new element does exceed the 24-foot special height limit within the downtown specific plan and the city's 36-foot maximum height limit, a variance is required for this feature. A pole has been installed to represent the extent of the spire when installed and for Planning Commission consideration. The updated historic assessment has confirmed that the restoration of the spire would be based on historic documentation and it is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. The staff report and draft resolution provide findings to support the approval of the variance. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the recommended categorical exemption subject to the Class 1 and Class 31 exemptions as noted in the staff report. Additionally, no exceptions to those proposed exemptions apply. The project does not require approval of a coastal development permit because the proposed action is considered exempt development pursuant to the municipal code. Specifically, the project does not require a coastal development permit because it does not include an enlargement or expansion to the building. It includes primarily repair and maintenance activities, and any new improvement is located more than 50 feet from the bluff top or the sand. It's recommended that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving Design Review 22-2304 and the variance that I don't have listed on the slide, variance 240690 at 425 South Coast Highway, subject to the facts and findings in the staff report and the resolution. Two things to consider with the approval would be the color scheme selection for the building, and then also the recommendations of the Heritage Committee as noted on the screen. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Martina. Any commissioner disclosures before we continue?
Yeah, I met with the applicant team on site.
As did I.
As did I as well.
I did not. Okay. All right. All right. What am I doing next? Guess I will, any questions of staff?
Martina, just a clarification, are there any issues in regards to the Coastal Commission and any pending review that they may or may not be undertaking that would interfere with us hearing this application and potentially taking action?
Thank you, Commissioner Dubin. No, at this time, the applicant can submit additional applications even with a pending appeal. So there is no issue that the appeal is pending and there is a current application. And the council or the commission can take action this evening.
Okay. And in terms of the new stucco and windows, you consider that a minor repair under a Class 1 CEQA guideline?
That's correct.
Okay.
As well as the Class 31, because it will be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Right, but the hotel isn't currently listed with as a historic resource, but it's eligible. Is that correct?
The hotel is a historic resource as defined by CEQA. So the Class 31 exemption affords them modifications that are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Right, even though it's not on the register.
That's correct.
Okay. Would staff, this is kind of getting down in the weeds a little bit, but as far as the art and public places, would staff consider the replacement of the crest or medallion that was existed in the original, on the original hotel, an architectural feature, or would that be considered an art piece that would be potentially part of the art and public places requirement?
I think that it's open to interpretation. I think that it's nuanced in that it is probably an architectural feature and part of the historic character of the building. If so, certain artwork may not be appropriate, but if it was deemed to be appropriate with the historic character of the building, I think it could constitute art in public places. And I believe the applicant is proposing to provide the art in public places at that location.
Okay. There was a page 24 under design review. It talked about the building being well articulated. I don't find it to be well articulated, so I'm just kind of curious how you made that determination. It was page 24, number 2, I believe.
Let's take a look here. I think that the idea was that the existing building as well as the proposed features will provide articulation for the structure consistent with the criteria.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's all I have.
Mr. Whiten?
Commissioner Dubin covered my questions. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. Just the whole sections in the staff report regarding kind of the environmental analysis, the CEQA portion and the coastal development permit. Nothing in those sections have changed from our last meeting, have they?
They have been revised. In this staff report, a expanded overall project description as it relates to CEQA has been expanded. So before, when we were providing the analysis for the CEQA exemption, it was limited to the scope of work that the Planning Commission was considering that evening. But the staff report has been expanded to address all of the other projects that the city is aware of, the pending submittals that we are currently processing, and then the future application for the signage in totality to address the CEQA component. So the project description as it relates to CEQA has been expanded in the staff report.
Since you brought it up regarding the signage and the potential future sign permit application, did staff try to or make any suggestion to the applicant team to try to fold that into this application?
Staff did work to try to see if obtaining an actual application was possible, and it looks like there's a couple of things, including some additional, I think, historic investigation and some other things as far as figuring out sign manufacturer, fabrication, certain things like that go into putting that application together that just wasn't feasible in the timeframe as we were working within. So their intent is to come back with the 2 blade signs that are similar as shown on the renderings and to what was historically there, but exactly how that's fabricated and attached to the building is still under investigation.
Okay, and I don't know if you can answer this question or if it's more for the applicant team, but I thought that we were beyond the idea of the rooftop sign. Is that still being considered?
No, it is not. So I think when we had the updated historic assessment address signage, they wanted to be comprehensive, but at this time, the rooftop sign is not proposed.
Okay, and
it's not it's not anticipated to be proposed.
okay, would this potential additional spire be proposed to be added to the rooftop cupola? Would that, if we were to grant the requested variance for that, would that in any way affect the potential for them coming back later and trying to propose a rooftop sign?
I don't believe so. And preliminarily, when we were looking through for details for that spire, you could actually see some of the original photos show that there was signage, and that spire may have actually been on the interior of the rooftop signage. So I don't think it would prohibit them nor make it more likely that they would propose a signage. It just would be sort of their independent features.
Okay. That answers my questions. Did you have any questions? Okay. I will open the public hearing if the applicant or applicant team would like to come forward.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Michael Kluchin with Hotel Laguna and the ownership of Hotel Laguna. I want to thank you again for your time and consideration. We've worked diligently to take in your comments from our last meeting and to address the concerns and the details that you were seeking. Put in a lot of time and effort. I think it shows forth on the proposal and in the report. And we ask that you grant the application so we can proceed and restore and rehabilitate this hotel and open it as soon as we possibly can.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Laura Oatman.
We're all aware of the correct R word. Be careful.
We don't want to be reminded of it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I was thinking driving over here tonight that you guys are amazing. I mean, you really are dedicated to this city to do this twice a month until God knows what hour. Your dedication to the city is absolutely incredible. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. And further to what Michael said, we're really hoping to get an approval this evening because that poor old hotel, I mean, we've been on this project for a year now. And in that year, we've watched it physically deteriorate. The windows, the stucco, we've got to get moving on this project. We have to get moving. So I really would appreciate a quick and easy approval this evening. With that, Martina, you have my presentation there. We just have a quick little slideshow, and we're not going to go back through all of the details as we did on our previous first meeting. We're just going to highlight the changes that we made in response to your very good suggestions, actually. You really sort of held our feet to the fire, made us go back and really look at what we were doing at that ground floor level, and in fact, made a much better project. So thank you for your suggestions.
There are two files here. Is there one is a slideshow and one is it a backup or? Which one? The first one. Okay.
Okay. We may also, Martina, at some point want to look at the landscape plan that I believe is found in your,
Is it a PDF or it's a PowerPoint? Okay.
okay, so the familiar, beautiful northeast perspective of that, the corner. You can see here just visibly some of the changes that we've made since the last time. If you go to the next slide, we'll list them. The overview of the changes that were made, the windows and the doors, all to be wood, solid wood at the first floor. Restoration of historic fenestration operation. In other words, operable windows at the first floor at that cafe in order to open up that space. Restoration of turned wood spindles at all restored arches. This also came as the result of having access to those original Gilbert Stanley Underwood drawings. So we found all sorts of details in there that we are actually physically taking out of those drawings, translating them into AutoCAD and putting them into our project. Removal of the ahistoric, ahistoric high planter and a restoration of the historic wainscot. The cleanup all along that side of removing most of those old, ugly, rotting, rusting vents and doors, and we're going to be replacing them. I think there will only be two that we're going to replace with a historic look, sort of a plaster diagonal vent. Repair and cleanup of the arches near the beach and restoration of moldings and spire at the roof tower. Next. Points to mention. Oh, here's our R words, George, sorry. Although this project is a rehabilitation, we are proposing to restore a significant number of items to their original state. You might almost say it was a partial restoration, but we won't go there. Although it's not explicitly mentioned on every slide, all restored moldings are to be made of run plaster, which we discovered from the original drawings. There'll be no glass fiber reinforced concrete proposed. There'll be no neon signs proposed. Our initial proposal was too abbreviated to be considered comprehensive by the commission. This one, in our opinion, is unequivocally comprehensive. All stucco may need to be demolished to ensure a continuous, consistent, historically accurate finish, similar to the one that you see up on the second and third floors, in order for that mission look to be achieved and to ensure that disruption to the public way is minimized now and in the future. Next slide. So the front door, again, we're using the original drawings and going back and in some cases improving upon them. In this case, yes, the thing that we have changed is we've raised the height of the door from the original 6'8" to, not sure exactly what that height is. But also it was inset and it will actually be flush, but we're going to be restoring the plaster volutes, the three-dimensional quality, which is lacking right now. We're going to be restoring the coins, and of course, oh, the turned wood spindles. I better fly through the rest of these. Next. I should have asked for an extension.
You'll be given a little extra
Can I
time.
get an extension? Thank you. Okay. Next. The medallion on PCH, which we spoke about briefly. We're going to restore that decorative urn atop, and then that proposed location will be a public art piece. We would propose that the city cultural arts director would develop appropriate guidelines for design in conjunction with our historic consultant. And potentially having it a contest of sorts that might be open to the public. Next slide. The tower moldings are all going to be restored per the original drawings, and then that spire atop the tower is where we're looking for the variance. It goes up about 14 feet above the top of the rooftop. Next. The corner planter and the wainscot on the east side, which is on the PCH side. We are basically taking those original drawings again and detailing them exactly as it was intended in 1929 with the wood spindles, the restored arches, the restored wainscot, removing the planter and raising, there'll be a small, very small little 4-inch curb there for the planter around the corner. Next. This is on the north side, same corner cafe, we keep calling it. We're going to be restoring those arches, which right now have been completely covered over. However, we noticed on the inside that they are still there and they are still existing. So we'll be restoring that to the original historic intent and demolishing that, that current existing stone planter. Next. The kitchen porch area, we still need that delivery area in order for this hotel and this kitchen and this dining room to function. Cannot remove that. We need to keep it there, but we're going to clean it up. We'll be removing all those ugly vents, putting on new roofing, new flashing, a new door, just making it clean and pure. And it is what it is. It's just going to be there. But we will clean it up, and most of those vents are gone. As you can see, the 2 vents on the left-hand side, we're going to go to a historically inspired plaster vent covers over what are the only 2 necessary vents on that sidewall. Next. We went around to the Rose Garden side based on your comments the last time we presented before you, and recognized that we needed to restore those Rose Garden arches as well. So we'll be doing that again with the restored wood spindles and solid wood doors and windows, operable windows all along there. Next. And this is again looking onto the Rose Garden, going up back towards the parking lot on the west elevation. Very similar, as you can see, to the original, except we're going to keep it a square top for a variety of reasons. It just is more in sync with the doors that are there, and also on the interior elevation of the lobbies, all the windows are square top. And removing the unnecessary doors and vents, cleaning that up. Next. The storefronts along PCH are basically going to be exactly as they were originally designed. We're going to be restoring the transom windows, restoring the original awnings there, and all the solid wood doors and glass windows. Next. And here we've just got some beautiful photographs of the way it used to be, the way it once was in the 1940s, which is our period of significance that we are trying to achieve. Next. The next 2 slides are showing the variation on the options for color. This one is the lighter wood, the pebble gray with a blue awning, and the next one is the little darker gray, gunmetal gray with the terracotta awning. That being said, We could mix and match these two. This is not set in stone that the terracotta has got to go with the gunmetal or the blue has got to go with the pebble gray. I think we might want to talk about, first of all, which is our preferred window, because that is the much more limiting window color, whether it's gunmetal gray or pebble gray, because we don't want to go to a custom color there. That would delay the project incredibly. So it would have to be one of those two colors. Awning colors are fun to talk about, but at the end of the day, they're not going to last as long as the windows. So those can always be changed after a couple of years. Next slide. Okay, this is the elevation along PCH in color. Showing a little bit of an insignia up there because that where the public art piece is going to go, because that is most, as best as we can tell, what was up there previously, something that looked somewhat like a coat of arms. That being said, again, this is going to be a piece of public art, and so we were hoping that the historic consultant can weigh in and talk to the public art person, and they can come up with a plan for what the parameters of that piece of art should be. I'm not sure this does not show the more current front door, but it does give you a good idea of what that front elevation is going to look like. It's got the spire up above and a few other features. Next. And then just walking around the building, we could just go quickly through this to show that we have looked at all four sides. We've got showing the arches in the rose garden. Here we're starting to see a bit of the restored arch there on the end of the building, and we'll keep going. I think. Yeah, just there's a lot of landscaping there that hides a lot of that part of the building. And we would propose that we keep that landscaping there because it's beautiful, it's overgrown, it's serving a purpose. And we will do what we can to restore that side though. And that's the end of the presentation. Is David Salkowitz here? There you are. I understand when you did a walkthrough the other day, Commissioner Whiten, that you had some comments about the landscaping plan. So I'm not sure if it would be appropriate at this time to bring up the landscape architect and let him talk a little bit about his landscape plan. So would that work?
Oh, well, is that okay with you, or you want to make it questions? Okay.
Good evening, David Salkowitz with Land Creative. I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to answer any questions that I may with regards to the landscaping on this project.
Commissioner Whiten, do you have any particular questions?
It looks as though your landscape is inspired by the historic photos in terms of the volume and so forth. I think, and the lattice, which was really a surprise, but it's right there on the postcards.
Correct.
I really, I think period appropriate plants would be interesting. The Raphiolepis, I made a comment about that on the main beach park, and I think we decided not to recommend the Raphiolepis because that's actually a modern hybrid.
Correct.
So if you could find a substitute for that does the same thing, that's a little more period appropriate, that would be great. And I don't want to constrain you, but I think that the overall flavor of what you're trying to do is in the spirit, which is what we're looking for. And after all this all this restoration work that's being done, the landscape should honor that also.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was our intent, to be as accurate as possible. You know, as looking back at some of the archival photography, the black and white, we made some assumptions, but I think we're kind of in that same period. You know, whether it's a Raphiolepis or a different type of border plant is really not just not, you know, the end of the world for us. You know, we're happy to replace that with another smaller understory plant that's also flowering. So again, we were just basing off of an old black and white photography, and I think the roses are quite appropriate and also are reminiscent of the rose garden that used to be there, which at some point we hope to also restore and really kind of bring that historical flavor back and bring that whole attitude about this project all the way into the landscaping as well.
Further down toward the beach,
Yes.
against the building, there's a big planting area and it has what, giant birds of paradise there? Or what does it have? I can't remember. They're tall and they're kind of thinning at the base. That's not on the property of the hotel. Is that why? That's within the right of way of presumably a city right of way.
Yeah. I believe
Okay.
so. That's on the, yeah.
Yeah, it's not on your property. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
And Chair Sadler, before we go into the public comment, I just
Okay.
want to clarify two things. There were two references in the staff report that I just needed to address. There's a reference on page 20 that noted to cross-reference page 5 of the staff report. It actually should read page 8 of the staff report. And then on page 25 of the staff report, it indicates that there's an attachment 2. It should actually be attachment 3. So I just want to clarify that for the record.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Do you have questions for the architect? Oh, okay. Before we move on to other members of the public, if any members of the commission have any questions for the applicant team.
Yeah, I've got a couple that are just sort of minor details.
Is it for the architect or?
Yes.
Okay.
I know that when we were, when I was there on Monday, you know, we were going over all of what you've proposed. And I want to say that, you know, we appreciate the fact that you really took a deep dive on this and did all the things that we were looking for. And we appreciate that, or I appreciate it. And I'm not going to speak for my fellow commissioners, but in regards to the fire escape detail and the Juliet balcony, I want to get your input on, you know, I think generally the front of the hotel is where, you know, details are mostly seen. And I know that we spoke to your team members there on Monday about those two items and feeling that if, you know, if one of them was to go away, it would be the fire escape detail versus the Juliet balcony on the front. And would you be amenable to putting that back on the front with a sort of a trade-off of not doing the fire escape detail?
Yes, after I know some of the staff report says that the structure was a lot of the reason why we were looking to avoid making that change initially. And after further investigation and seeing the degradation of the stucco, we think it's now an option to be able to tie into that structure a little bit more feasibly. So we would definitely consider restoring the Juliet balcony on front. There is some issue with incorporating drainage. So we
Yeah, I'm
might
aware of that.
propose using more of like a faux looking balcony that's actually not a true balcony.
Yeah, of course. I think that's understood. So, and my only other comment, and I just want to make it clear to you that this is, maybe I should save it for a comment, but it's kind of it's in regards to the medallion or the art piece. I know that there was some debate in the past that might have been a painted feature versus something else, but I think since we're at this point and it's going to be part of the Art and Public Places programming for the building, that I really strongly recommend that it is a tile feature versus a painted on feature. And you know, as far as the options in terms of doing that, you do have the option of selecting an artist without going through a competition if you choose to, or if you prefer to hand it over to the Arts Commission and let them conduct a competition, that's also fine. I'm sure there'll be some sort of established budget based on the building costs or whatever. I'm not sure how that formula goes, but there's a couple of options there. So, but I want to really be clear that for longevity's sake, that it's not a painted design, that it is actually a tile mural.
We found the word painted medallion throughout the old drawings. That being said, This is a rehabilitation. So I think we have a little leeway there. And I think working between the Arts Commissioner and our historic consultant, I think we could probably come up with some decent parameters for what that design, should be, what the materials should be, what the budget is, all of that kind of
Okay.
thing. So, yeah.
Because I know, we have some really highly qualified people and artists, local artists that could do a nice tile piece up there that would complement the building, not something that is out of place.
Mhm.
So
Agreed.
just wanted to
And
drive
and
that
in
point.
fact, as we were walking on the sidewalk the other day, I was looking up at that and thinking, it's going to be beautiful when we have that up there. The balcony is going to cover that, just so you know. You're not going to be able to see that as well,
Well, if you're standing underneath it, yeah, of
Yeah.
course, but from everywhere else you will.
because there's a lot of other things going on there. But yeah, no, we're open.
Don't try to slide out of the balcony. That's my only question.
Yeah, I have a couple more picayune questions about the function of the building and then some of the discussion that we had on site, just to follow up and get closure on it. Back to the north side of the building, the trash enclosure is encroaching into the public right of way. So is that something that is coming back to the Planning Commission? You have a sketch in your drawings that just shows an enclosure with some sort of a trellis top, but there's no detail. What's happening
We're
with
going to
it?
default to city staff to weigh in on the process of the encroachment permit.
If there were modifications proposed within the city right of way, it would require a revocable encroachment permit. We haven't reviewed that or plans for that at this time. This is the first time hearing of it. So the applicant, we could work with the applicant to figure out the way to process that. Or if, as a condition of approval, if they were, supposed to provide any additional enhancement to that area, we can review that.
Yeah, okay, so we can add that on.
My understanding is that it's always been there and always been encroaching.
I don't know offhand. However, if there were modifications and then it's in the right of way, we would process some type of encroachment permit to maintain it beyond the property line.
Okay, and is that something we add as a condition of approval?
It could be.
Or is that separate from this?
To the extent that there's, again, what's before the commission tonight, if there's anything that would encroach in the public right of way, it would have to get a encroachment permit. So
Correct.
I think we probably would want to figure out first if that's true, because then if it is true, certainly it could be added as a condition of approval. But if it's not a part of the project
Right.
plan, something separate, then it wouldn't be.
Yeah, the only reason to bring it up is I want to be, everything else is being touched. And that's a carbuncle out there. You want to do something about it, but it's not a part of what you've submitted. Right.
As staff mentioned, we're coming back for a signage permit and that's unknown. So we could always come back at that time with the trash enclosure as well.
Also on that elevation, next to, as you face the building to the left of the service door at the northwest corner there are two takeout windows. The one on the right, you're removing, correct? The one on the left is still shown on your drawings. Is that going to be an operable takeout window?
Talking about down below.
Yeah.
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 The black one's staying and we're cleaning up the other. Yeah, the one that's black right now is the
Yeah.
one that's staying. It's the more modern one that I believe you guys obtained permits for.
Yeah, and how is that going to be detailed? I mean, is it going to be the same window set as the other windows? Is it going to be something, a one-off window? What's it?
Do you like it to be
Well,
the same as the other windows? Because we hadn't really gotten
Yes.
that far and detailed.
Yeah, I just
on
don't
that
want,
window.
I don't want to have it get lost in the shuffle, that's all. Just to,
Happy to.
put it
make
on your
wood
radar.
Like everything else on the first. floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Okay. In the retail area, currently there are awnings shown. We have the half moon awnings, and then we have the eyebrow awnings. And when you look at the historic postcards, they're the wonderful deep slung awnings that you know, we can't really do because there isn't enough head height clearance anymore. However, we could, we had this discussion out on site, we could widen those awnings so they're more substantial than what they are now. Right now, they look a little contemporary, you know, and they're a little short. So, no, the ones at the retail. So if they can extend as far as, you know, to the property line essentially, which would be 5.5 feet or something, and, you know, try to reflect the historic feeling rather than a contemporary feeling. And if you go and look at the corner of Ocean and Coast Highway, there are awnings there that I think probably, you know, are closer to what you might want. They're not exactly what you can want, but deeper. And it'd be great if we could get the original because they're very cool, but probably not without, you know, a Caltrans permit or something.
Yeah, we would just have to work with city staff on what's allowable if it extends
Okay.
beyond the encroachment into the public way.
And speaking of awnings, around the corner at the valet, I think we should discuss this, but I think it would be appropriate not to have the same awning in the valet as we have on the street. The street is, the streets are public, facing the street, that's the public realm. That's private property. You need to have some sort of shade, even if it's umbrellas that are, make it feel more beachy and less commercial. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's
going to be conditions of approval.
Yeah, okay. The GFRC was one of our requests, and you've replaced the GFRC with plaster. Is that correct? Everywhere?
Correct, everyone. yeah.
Okay, great. And then we also had, the mullions. We had this discussion out on site also. There, how many different kinds of windows? 3 different kinds of windows in the building conditions. We have the deep recessed pair of double hung windows that face Coast Highway. And then we have the contiguous.
I was going to say, in our last slide, we have some older historic photos to reference in case we want to do that. If
Yeah.
Martina doesn't mind pulling up our slide.
And what I'm
Sorry,
talking.
which slide are we? pulling up?
The one with all the
All the historic
photographs.
photos at the end, towards the end.
It's kind of.
The reason for this is this will affect the appearance of the building elevations that will change depending on how we decide to treat this mullion. There's a mullion in the double hung windows, which are separated by what, 8-inch mullion or something?
It's roughly 10 inches. Yeah.
10 inches. And right now, the way it's shown is the whole piece is recessed into the building wall. If you look at these, and Martina's bringing this up, if you look at the historic.
That one, yeah.
Okay, can we see that?
There you go.
You can't see it quite as well, but on the southeast corner facing street.
Do you want this one?
There's a better example.
Where?
These were the most from the period of significance.
Yeah, period. Yeah.
I think we have a south corner.
Yeah. So actually, in the staff report, it shows 2 different postcards with 2 different conditions. So the mullion would get boxed out essentially the way it is now with plaster. What we're approving right now doesn't have that detail. So what we'd be approving is just a double hung window inset without the center mullion boxed out to be flush with the building wall. And so there's that detail. Do we want that where it's appropriate? and the color of that, because the postcard showed two different colors. They show it dark, and then they show it the same light color as the building wall. In any case, the question for the applicant, that's a discussion for us, a decision for us, but the question to you.
Happy to do it.
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question has to do with how that retail functions on the interior. And as I understand it, there are three different levels. The two bookend retail spaces are separate spaces. The center is combined into one space, and that they're dropping, what, 10 inches?
Yeah, roughly, just call it a foot between each.
Okay,
unit.
so the overall changing grade is 18 inches.
Three different finished floor levels.
Oh, 12 inches, sorry,
3
12,
feet.
24, or 3 feet, yes, 3 feet from there, yeah. Okay, so those each are walled off into separate spaces. Then the hallway behind them is walled off, and on the courtyard side, those are individual spaces also, is that right?
No, they're through Fair from PCH all the way to the Rose Garden for each of those spaces.
Ah, but there, right now, there's a ramp in be,
Yeah, that'll be.
That ramp gets infilled, literally the
okay.
2 levels on either side are
Yeah,
level. It
okay,
just-
how does the access work to get into those spaces?
It would all come from PCH.
So there's no access from the lobby into those spaces? Okay, and also is there access from those spaces into the, well, for exiting, there probably is, but is there access to the courtyard?
There would be access, but it's not emergency access. So
Okay,
that would be available, but it's not
okay,
a code.
all right. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Golden, any questions? Yeah, I really have no questions. Just other than I'm looking at the historic plans, and it's got a detail of that front balcony, and it was an actual balcony, right? But it had a window behind it, not a door. So it's kind of an odd situation that they created an actual depth to the balcony, but you didn't have a door to walk on. Like, I suppose you could have opened the window and put some plants out there or something. But I guess if you were to restore that, would you create it that way or just cap it off? Because I'm wondering if that's just a big, right.
Our intention would be to cap it off just to prevent
A water intrusion. problem.
water dripping down on guests as they're coming into the main entrance.
Well, or, they show a drain going through between a double
Right, we
wall
would
and stuff.
incorporate a
Are you
drainage.
looking at the drawing?
Is it called detail of balcony at 3rd floor, east elevation? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just curious about that. Other than that, I have no questions at this point.
But you know that fire escapes didn't have doors either. You just crawled out the window.
Right. Maybe.
All of our windows, though, for the hotel, to prevent fallout because of the proximity to the ground, we have a max opening size in those spaces.
4 inches or something. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Now, if there are other members of the public who wish to come up and comment and speak, please, you'll have 3 minutes each. And if you could, after you speak or before you speak, if you could print your name on the little sheet that's on the table over there. That way we just have your name for the record to get it right for the minutes. But thank you. And if there's going to be a lot of people speaking, you could kind of line up to move the process along.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Yurka, Laguna Beach Historic Preservation Coalition. I didn't get a chance to speak after your comments at the previous commission meeting, and I just wanted to thank you for how thoughtful you were about addressing issues, particularly at the first floor of the project. I think you've really greatly improved the project, and I very much appreciate how thoughtful you were. Just to clarify, this property has officially been determined eligible for the National Register, so it is listed on the California Register. I do have a couple of concerns. One is the fact that the application is still being processed. And I know you guys are familiar with the term piecemealing and making decisions about a project that don't have all of the details of the project before you. And I know that we were able to see certain features of it, but this is like a classic example of piecemealing. And I'm very sympathetic with the property owners wanting to move this along. I know that there are, this project had issues that have nothing to do with this status of the building and how important it is to Laguna. But nonetheless, it should have been delayed until the full application had been processed. And, you're going to declare it exempt from CEQA. And you're going to delegate the authority to approve the rest of it to staff. That's not appropriate. Also, the city mentions that there's going to be interior work. It's been done in the past and proposes that it wouldn't need discretionary approval. Usually interiors are exempt from CEQA. The exception is for important public buildings. Now, that's not the guest rooms. The guest rooms would not be a consideration, but things like the lobby and public spaces, that's why for the Rivian Theater project, that's why the interior was very much considered. The same is true with important public spaces for hotels. It's been mentioned that there would be a condition that work would be reviewed to make sure it's compliant with the standards. I'd like to know who would do that because it cannot be the developer's consultant who makes that determination. I understand the desire to create a nice piece of art as part of this, but nothing should be added that's not documented in photographs. And if it was originally painted, it should be painted, not tile. And I know that paint is less permanent, but you would touch up the paint. That would be part of this. And personally, for a rehabilitation of this magnitude, I would urge you to just count that as the public art component. I mean, this building is a work of art, and that is going to be much more apparent, but I don't know if you can do that. Also, I'm sorry to see that a full window unit was not brought in as you had requested so that we could see what the fiberglass looks like. I know that you were not supportive, but I do want to again remind you that the Heritage Commission unanimously recommended wood windows. And also, I wanted to clarify something staff said last time, which is that, this, as long as it meets the standards, it would be eligible for a Mills Act contract. That's not true. The Mills Act is really for high standards of preservation. And if the Heritage Committee said wood windows and there aren't wood windows, I would be very surprised if it received a Mills Act contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, again, Commissioners, Chair Sadler. Again, Jordan Sisson here speaking for Local 11, who will be speaking later tonight. For sake of brevity, I'm going to just hit some of the new points that were outlined in our comment letter. First, I want to thank the city for rescinding the CDP exemption as we requested. To appreciate the city attorney's office work on that, so thank you. Two, in terms of the appeals, if you could clarify whether or not any non-property owners have any appeal rights or applicable rules, that would be fantastic. On my third point, in terms of the major remodel, I want to bring your attention to page 25. The staff report cites two areas. The land use element, which says alterations or replacement, not demolitions. That's important to note. Second, the code section that they referenced, 25.10.008, that's landscaping requirements for R1 zones. That's not here. This isn't a specific plan on the Central Bluffs. So not sure if that's really applicable. In terms of what they did provide, I thank the staff for clarifying it was on attachment 3, the project plans, but I think they were meant to reference sheet T.1.13. That has one page that talks about demolitions based off of a memo. The memo is not the code, and that memo is not provided. The land use element's very clear. Alterations and replacement, not just demolitions. We would ask for that to actually be part of the record if that's going to be the basis that this is not a major renovation. Additionally, you're going to consider what does the Coastal Commission has interpreted what structural changes in a major renovation is. I've highlighted the section that, again, this is the Commission's own staff report. Alterations in structural elements, which the Commission has interpreted to include roof structures, foundation, exterior walls, structural framing elements, and overall square footage. That was the issue back in 2020. As you saw on page 20 to 24 of this staff report, just about every part of the exterior is being changed. You also have a future structural permit that's going to do an entire re-roof. You're going to have the entire facade renovated. Respectfully, as you heard, these are extensive. And we respectfully believe that this probably goes over the 50% threshold. In addition, in terms of that one-page project plan, they don't identify all the projects over the last 4 years. Again, you have to just go to the staff report, which identifies all the different project applications, the future applications, and just about every part of this structure is being touched in the last 4 years. At some point, it's a major renovation. The fourth point, I want to say the bluff edge determination, that's a brand new document that was just presented. We do have some skepticism about that bluff determination, which says ends right at this hotel. That's very contrary to what the commission said, that this project sprawls clearly across the bluff edge onto the sandy beach. Fifth, there's no discussion about lower cost accommodations whatsoever. So in terms of consistency with those elements, there's no facts in the record for your determination. Thank you so much. And if you could clarify the appeal rights for non-property owners, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, good evening. My name is James Brine. I am a researcher with Unite Here Local 11, and I am also here to address item 6.5, which pertains to the renovations of Hotel Laguna. Please do not support this item today. As highlighted in the California Coastal Commission staff report from April 30 of 2020, as was mentioned before, there have been significant issues with a previous project at Hotel Laguna concerning its compliance with the Coastal Act. The Coastal Commission staff pointed out a valid concern regarding the potential of successive minor projects to cumulatively trigger the major remodel definition. This is a substantial issue because it's defined as a major remodel. The hotel must comply with the current local coastal program policies. Currently, there is an appeal pending before the Coastal Commission regarding this matter. Given this unresolved appeal, and the substantial issues identified, it is irresponsible to continue approving the further development at this site, including the project in item 6.5. The staff report does not adequately consider the cumulative impact of these developments, which could have serious implications for our coastal policies and community. I urge you to stay the action on this project until the issues raised in the Coastal Commission appeal are fully addressed. Our coastal environment and compliance with established policies must be prioritized to ensure responsible development. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Additionally, I'll use my remaining time to note some of the comments from a member who sadly had to leave early. One Teresa, she works at the Pacific Edge here in Laguna Beach. I'm here to urge you to oppose item 6.5 concerning the renovations at Hotel Laguna. The staff report mentions various significant projects at the hotel, from painting to window replacements to extensive exterior repairs and roof replacement. However, the staff report does not address whether these cumulative developments trigger the major remodel definition, potentially allowing the project to sidestep critical Coastal Act and local coastal program policies. These policies are vital for protecting our bluff faces, sandy beaches, and ensuring affordable accommodations for working families. Please ensure a thorough review is conducted and safeguard our coast and community access. Reject this item until these issues are resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will also just say I will be translating for the next member who will be coming up to speak, and I would like to be afforded additional time to translate what she says, if that's reasonable.
Chair, just to be clear, so under the Brown Act, if a translation is required, you provide additional time double. So if it's 3 minutes, you provide 6 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Buenas noches, miembros de la Comisión de Planificación. Mi nombre es Graciela. Trabajo en el Pacific de Laguna Beach. Hablo hoy para ponerme al artículo 6.5 con respecto a las renovaciones propuestas en el Hotel Laguna. El informe del personal describe numerosos proyectos pasados y futuros en el hotel, incluyendo nueva pintura, reemplazo de ventanas, reparaciones exteriores y reemplazo del techo. De hecho, el hotel lleva varios años fuera de operación. A pesar de la naturaleza extensa de estos trabajos, el reporte de la ciudad no considera si estos proyectos califican acumulativamente como una remodelación significante. Este descuido podría significar que las renovaciones se están realizando poco a poco para eludir la clasificación de renovaciones significantes, lo que requería el cumplimiento con la ley costera y las políticas del programa costero local. No podemos permitir que tales maniobras pongan en peligro nuestra costa y que se limite el acceso accesible para las familias. Por favor, opónganse a este artículo hasta que se ordenen estas cuestiones. Gracias.
Okay, we'll launch translation. Good evening, Planning Commission members. Good evening, Planning Commission members. My name is Graciela Velasquez. I work at Pacific Edge in Laguna Beach. I'm speaking today to oppose item 6.5 regarding the proposed renovations at Hotel Laguna. The staff report outlines numerous past and future projects at the hotel, including painting, window replacement, and exterior repairs and roof replacement. Indeed, the hotel has been out of operation for multiple years. Despite the extensive nature of these works, the staff remodel fails to consider whether these projects can cumulatively qualify as a major remodel. This oversight could mean renovations are being piecemealed to circumvent the major renovation classification, which would require a compliance with the Coastal Act and local coastal program policies. We cannot allow such maneuvers to jeopardize our coasts and limit affordable access for families. Please oppose this item until these issues are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Marbella de Dios. I be organizer from Local 11. I am speaking today because I'm deeply concerned about the proposed renovation at the hotel. It seems that the project, along with several other remodeling efforts, is being piecemeal to avoid being classified as major remodel under our local coastal program. This tactic raises serious issues because it means that development might not completely, with important coastal act policies that protect our coasts. If so, this development will not be brought into compliance with current coastal act policies that protect our coasts, like avoiding development on bluff face on public sand and beaches, or providing affordable overnight accommodation that allow working families to access the coast. Our community deserves better oversight and transparency to ensure that any development respect our coastal environment and remain accessible to everyone. Please reject this item until these concerns are adequately addressed. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm all too familiar with this project. I've been working on it for 20 years for prior owners, and I think this group has brought to you the most, I think, defined and complete presentation thus far. A lot of detail and so forth. I'm not a fan of approving projects with conditions because the conditions are never really clear. So if staff has a good analysis and list of what those conditions might be, and it's clear to everybody, and it's in the minutes clearly, then I could see you supporting this project under the circumstances. The spire on the tower exceeds the height limit and thus creates a variance. I see that it was in one of the renderings an element of the historic tower, whether it was underneath the sign or not. It looks like originally the sign wasn't there. It was put up later, and the spire was there originally. So if you believe that that's a defining element of the history of this tower, then I could support that as well. I don't see, however, the tile roof defined on the tower. On the elevations, it just shows a curved roof, but there's no note defining that it's the tile and a barrel tile roof, not an artificial S tile roof, would have been the tile that was used. Now, on the imagery, the 3D renderings, you see the texture of an edge of a tile roof on the tower, but it's not defined. So I just wanted you to clarify that in fact, the tile roof is going to be replaced. Those of us who live on the hillside, there's a number of us that look down on this hotel every day. And it would be, I think, a critical element that roof not be just a elastomeric smooth surface roof. It's a character feature I think you should consider. Otherwise, I'm supportive of the project at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner comments.
Chair, do you want to have the applicant address any of those issues?
Okay. Would the applicant like to come back for, yes, the applicant has additional 3 minutes to respond to, add any information or respond to any of the comments that they've heard here.
Yeah. Thank you, Morris, for coming and speaking for us. I just want to address some of the previous speakers that were talking a lot about 2020 and what happened before and all this stuff that had happened without permits. And I'm hoping that one keeps in mind that this is a new owner, this is a new architectural team. It's a fresh start, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that this project comes back to life again. It's just sad to see the way that it's disintegrating and right before our eyes. So I'm really hoping that we can ask for an approval, and maybe Martina, if you were keeping notes like I was, we can make sure that we have all these conditions itemized and listed out, prior to a vote, if that's possible.
Actually, or could you respond to Morris's comment about the roof? Because I remember when we were standing on the inside looking up, we were talking about the roof.
Oh, yeah,
When
it's a
I-
barrel tile roof. It just didn't show up very well, I suppose, in the rendering.
Yeah.
But it's in all of our notes and our drawings. It's called out as such, right?
It's a fairly low slope, so you can't see it based off of where the angles are taken from the renderings, but we are planning on, it's pretty well degraded at this point, so we're
Yeah.
planning on replacing like for like.
Yeah, that's what you talked about.
Okay. Homer's. What are you gonna say? Speak to the mic.
Yeah, for one thing, hello, commissioners, thank you for hearing us. For the trash, I thought that was a great comment, and Commissioner Witten had mentioned an operational solution of a trash compactor, which once we get the operator on board, I think hopefully we will try to diminish the trash enclosure to the greatest extent possible. That was a fair comment. I would like to ask Martina to please explain how and why our proposal does not trigger a substantial remodel. It's very clear. It's only about 2 or 3 sentences long, and the city guideline is exact verbatim for what the Coastal Commission has. We do not exceed 50% on any of the major 4 elements of the building in modification or addition to the structure. And I think it should be clearly explained to the people here who are claiming that it is a major remodel. It is not by legal definition.
Why don't you, before she responds, is there anything else you'd like to respond to? We'll circle back to Martina, but anything else one comment was that this project is still being processed. What, other than potentially the sign permit issue, what else is still being processed? Or maybe that's a question for Martina.
Everything in the staff report is the current scope that we have and the foreseeable future scope.
Okay. Can any other comments you'd like the applicant team to respond to or anything at this point?
There's a comment about the historic interior renovation. Can you address that?
Our understanding is that the building is not on the National Register, and that to be on the National Register, it has to be a restoration of the interior. It is not. The interior has been repeatedly changed over the years. and it's not going back to that. So I don't think it's ever going to be on the National Register. So sort of a moot point from our point of view.
So we had a meeting last week with JC Resorts, who will most likely be the operator. I believe they're just crossing the Ts and dotting the Is on the final contract. It met with the interior designer, with Joanna, and had a great long conversation about the interiors, including the lobby and some changes that they would, the operator would like to see. And it would all be pointing back towards a much more historic nature than what you're currently seeing when you walk through that lobby.
There was I think I mentioned this to you the first time we met, there was a huge painting of the USC Rose Garden that filled an entire wall. And that's not something that would fit in a trash dumpster. And it's pretty hard to hide. So it's probably somewhere. And
Did you
that
look for it?
that's the kind of thing, it would be great
I
to
was
see
gonna
come
look
back.
for it and the owners, no, we don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it.
I think I saw it in George's.
Yeah, like I got room for it.
So I just want to say, to the extent there's any interior issues for informational purposes, that's fine. But again, for tonight's items, the interior isn't on the agenda for an approval.
Thank you. Okay, anything else you'd like to add? Nope. Okay, Martina, I guess the question regarding the major remodel, it was covered in the staff report. The staff made its determination that it is not considered a major remodel, even considering previous work. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Sadler. The slide, let me make it a little bit bigger. So to clarify, it is correct. Staff did analyze the project for the major remodel threshold. The project plans, it is identified as attachment 3 on sheet T1.13. And the plans indicate that it's under the thresholds. We look at linear square footage of interior and exterior load-bearing walls, as well as foundation, reinforcements or demolition, and then also roof framing. And in this case, the project did not cross that threshold. It's approximately 11.3% of the exterior and interior load-bearing walls that's being modified, and 14% of the foundation reinforcements. And it's important to note that these calculations include the work that is pending with the Coastal Commission. It takes those into consideration. It also takes into consideration the pending structural retrofit that the building department is reviewing right now. So the all of the projects that are described in the staff report adequately encompass these calculations, or included in these calculations.
So we're not close to the 50% threshold.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for staff or anything? Okay, thank you, applicant team. Anybody in particular wish to begin?
Well, before we do, since they presented us with a couple of options in terms of the awning and window frame color, we should probably
discuss
that a bit before.
Okay.
Make some kind of a determination there.
You want to start off next?
Okay.
There were two proposed, let's talk about the color scheme first. There was two proposed color schemes, but the applicant team said that they were willing to mix and match between those two regarding, so we've got the window trim color, and we have the awning colors. Thank you.
So yeah, my preference is the I don't know what number scheme this is. It's the rust awnings with the darker gunmetal gray window trim. That's my preference.
That would be this one.
Yeah. Ring card girl.
My preference, whatever it's worth. This one.
Yeah.
Commissioner Whiten?
I like the blue awning,
I was afraid you were going to say that.
but I could mix and match.
you know, and awnings can change the colors over time, you know, I believe, you know, once we approve this, doesn't prohibit them from
So the
changing
window
colors in
frame
the
is more-
future. Um,
I feel that the red awnings are too reminiscent of what's out there right now. You can get a pretty good idea of what that color is. And I just don't see what that sort of hunter type red has to do with coastal.
What about the gunmetal? Do you like the gunmetal with the blue or do you like the lighter one?
Oh, well, we really are locked in on the window colors because unless.
That's not going to change whatever the decision.
No, well, but you have to make the choices within the context of the windows. So I could live, I surprisingly kind of like the softer colors rather than the gunmetal, but I could live with it because whatever it is on the public elevations, the windows are all recessed. So they're kind of in shadow anyway. So if there's a general feeling that the gunmetal is preferable, then I don't think it has much impact, but it's a more contemporary look. Although when we were out on the site, it's hard to tell from old reprinted 100-time postcards what the real colors were, but they look, the window frames look pretty dark. So I could live with that. I prefer the blue.
My preference, and you know, on some of these things, I would defer to the applicant team, but we have, I believe we have historic examples of both of these, I think, over the years, something similar to both of them. And I like the blue better too. And I think it's, like you said, a little bit ties into the you know, ocean environment. And I feel as though the red is more commonly used, and it's used a lot more around town. I think I think that, you know, and again, things change over time, but the Bodega restaurant right across the street has a similar stripes, I believe, but which we've kind of moved away. And we've said in our previous meeting that there was consensus to prefer a solid awning as opposed to stripes. But my feeling is I like scheme one with the lighter window trim. And that the window, I just felt as though the darker, and I believe that also the recessed thing, you know, but because as you said, it was in shadow, that maybe you're not even going to notice that much. But I thought that with the really darker color, it made the windows maybe pop a little too much and look like little eyes looking out. So I like scheme one.
Yeah, I actually, you know, in my heart of hearts, prefer scheme one.
We need to call Steve Kellenberg and this.
Well, you know, listen, I'm not going to fall on my sword over this. I mean, it's the window color is the more critical decision because the awning color somewhere down the road could revert back to whatever. So, you know, if the blue is your preference, I will defer to that. I just like the warmer color of the rusty brick awning. I think to me, but I'm okay with the blue too.
I'm the same as George. I mean, I generally defer to you two guys on these things, so I'm fine.
So scheme. So it's scheme one, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we've made a decision. Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
I also want to
So that's scheme one.
talk about the balcony, the Juliet balcony. I want to confirm that the applicant team is willing to do that.
They said they were. So I
Okay.
think now it's a discussion amongst us. Do we feel that that's important? And my original thought on that was it's a non-functional balcony. So it's not going to be a true balcony, a Juliet balcony. And, you know, I was thinking it's a potential water intrusion issue and it's a, you know, pigeon perch, you know, and is it going to, you know, get covered with pigeon stuff over the years? So, you know, I would, but it does add some additional articulation to the front of the building. And as we were pushing from the previous meeting. This building, it's the little details that make it all kind of come together. And so I'm in favor of that front Juliet balcony being restored. As far as I'm concerned, it can have a top on it so that it's not an actual true balcony and it becomes more of just a architectural pop out. I don't think I agree that trying to restore the fire escape balcony is probably, it's not a good idea and would probably become a functionality issue with the workings of the fire escape itself. So I'm okay with that one not being restored.
Yeah, I think it is, I think it's terrific that the owner has agreed to add the Juliet balcony because it really helps with the articulation of the building. And particularly as you're driving up, going south, up and driving north also, it's a pretty flat building. And all of that detail just along with the widened awnings will make that whole elevation come to life, I think.
Now, these other, so the color scheme we have the Heritage Committee recommendations, and for the doors and windows, we came up with our compromise, and I think, and the applicant team has agreed with that, and I think we've already made that decision. The detail around the fire escape of the north elevation, painting the trim color, they've agreed to do that. The vertical, I believe the vertical plaster caps at the retail stores, that's part of the project as well. I'm not sure if this is officially in the record now, but I believe that the applicant team has agreed to the historic monitor situation. Is that correct? And where stucco repairs are necessary, I believe the applicant team has agreed to that and has gone further even to say that, depending on how it works out, there may be a much more extensive stucco redoing and reworking, and perhaps entire walls having to be restuccoed, or maybe.
I think they did.
Yeah,
In regards to that, I think they were talking about complete.
I think Martina.
Chair Sadler, let me clarify. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The recommendation to the Heritage Committee, items 2, 3, and 5 have already been incorporated into the project plans as presented tonight. Item 1 was discussed at length at the last meeting, and we've I don't think will be a condition that would be accepted, but the only one that would need to be included in the motion this evening would be if a historic monitor should be required for the project. So, I'm just clarifying, that's the only one I think that the commission should discuss.
Do we want to clarify that the applicant has the ability within their discretion with regard to the plaster, as opposed to patching to fully repair it?
I don't think it needs to be clarified. The project plans indicate repair and replace as necessary throughout. So I think that as presented this evening, it gives that discretion.
Okay, so it doesn't go against the Heritage Committee.
And what is staff's position on the historic monitor?
It'd be up to the discretion of the Planning Commission to require that as a condition. And it is typical for historic projects that it is included, and it typically is something that the city would hire as an independent third party monitoring the project.
So, but we would need to add that as a condition of approval.
Correct.
What does staff feel, or what does the commission feel about that?
Well, one of the things that we discussed with the applicant team when we were there on Monday was especially around the front door, that the original detailing around the front door had been covered over with some stucco or something, and that and when that gets removed, there might be a possibility of discovering either paint colors or something underneath there that might potentially contribute to a more positive completion of the renovation. I used renovation. Everybody acknowledge, please. And that it would be a good idea if, there was somebody, whether, I don't think it would be a subcommittee of this group, but it would be a third party person that, if they made a discovery, an aha moment that went, wow, look at this detail or this color or whatever, that should have somebody, make some kind of determination as to, its relevance in terms of the renovation.
So yes, to the historic monitor.
Yeah, okay.
Describe to us what the historic monitor would do and how much it would cost.
I might answer the second question first. As far as scoping, I think, I don't want to estimate exactly what it costs, but I think for the Rivian project, which included a historic monitor, I think was around $30,000 for the project. And what it included was periodic site visits, periodic review, throughout the project. Before the project even starts, they get a schedule together with the contractor and work through and figure out times that they should be on site, especially if there is any uncovering of things, what happens at that time. And they go through and make sure all of the work is completed consistent with the historic assessment, as well as any field, decisions are made consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay, so is the consensus that a historic monitor would be a good idea?
Yeah, though I think it has to be clearly laid out what the historic monitor is doing. What their objective is.
If we were to,
Typically, the main intent is to implement the plans as approved and the recommendations in the historic assessments. And so that, just providing and reviewing the building plans to make sure they're consistent with the historic drawings and things like that for like the storefronts, those types of things would be something the historic monitor would do.
And how does that differ from the normal process of periodic inspections by the building department?
The building department doesn't have the historic expertise as the historic monitor would for building construction methods and applications and things like that. And typically the inspectors are only looking for compliance with the plan, but the monitor also helps in the development of that plan as well.
And is it somebody local in Laguna Beach area who's familiar with things around here, or is it more of just a general historic expert?
They're local to Southern California. Some are in Orange, Long Beach. I don't think I haven't seen a resident of Laguna Beach.
No,
be a
that's
historic
not
monitor
literally
that
a
I'm
resident, but
aware of,
someone,
but
someone who's
fairly
familiar.
local, yes.
Plenty of resident busybodies.
What's that?
Plenty of resident busybodies.
Yeah.
my feeling is this, this is a request that's a little above and beyond normal. So I would feel comfortable with, a general condition of approval that a historic monitor be provided and leave it up to staff's discretion to determine what exactly that entails. Would you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, and that would be consistent with other historic projects like the Pottery Place, Earth Cafe, Coast Inn, and also the Heisler Building also had a historic monitor as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel confident that the architects have this expertise. So we're not going to have a set of drawings that's not working with, I mean, they're replicating as much as they can from the original drawing. So I don't think that the historic monitor, except as George says, on-site conditions when plaster is covered.
And they also.
So what I'm saying is it wouldn't cause probably a lot of work. The architects are fully intending to do this rehab restore.
Correct. And one of the other benefits that can happen with a historic monitor is there's inspection that goes into a little bit more detail than the building inspectors can do. So like for the condition of the stucco repair, they're able to verify that with a little more expertise than a building inspector would.
And I'm trying to remember if this is still part of the plans and the where we've gotten to this point. There was at one point we were talking about the window thresholds and trying to maintain where possible the wood thresholds that are there. That would be something that the historic monitor could provide. Okay. All right. Well, that seems like a good idea. What else do we need to agree on or discuss?
The blocking between the windows. And I think we should, where it exists, replace it with plaster. Not create any new conditions, but where where that blocking exists between two double hung windows, we should replicate that.
I agree with that because it coordinates with the finish of the building and doesn't look like like it's some other element that doesn't make sense.
Okay, that's fine with me.
So that would be apply that idea universally on all the elevations, right?
So just to clarify then, in some of the project plans, it included inserting the preset double windows with a integrated mullion. Those areas where there's an existing mullion would not be removed. They'd be two separate windows inserted and that mullion maintained. And then in other areas where it's already been removed, then the solid double feature would be installed. Is that correct?
I think that's what you're
I
saying.
think that's what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a variety of conditions on the building, which is one of the few areas of interest in terms of the popped elevation. Maybe we could have the architects come up.
That's kind of I'll reopen the public hearing to see whether or not that's an issue or a problem or.
We had a really constructive meeting on the site with George and Susan. And currently, the windowsills are gone, they're rotted, and we all looked at that, and it was understandable. A lot of them aren't even there. There's just sheet metal. The returns currently where the windows are inset, some up to a foot, some 6 inches, are actually one by wood material that's been painted over many, many times. What we decided, and I thought it was a very good suggestion from Commissioner Whitten, is that we have the returns to the window frame, whether that's 1 inch, 6 inches, or a foot or more, be plaster, and that the center mullions also be plastered, and the face of the mullion be flush with the face of the building. So these are punched windows with a complete plaster return. I thought that was a great suggestion, and it's our intention to do the final working drawing details in that manner.
Yeah, but it's different in different locations on.
There are, generally
yeah.
speaking, 3 different levels of punch,
Yeah.
of recess, and we would treat them all that way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to clarify color for that. If it's flush with the face, whether or not it's the exterior wall color or if it becomes part of the window system.
I recommend the exterior wall color.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Lastly, do we need to provide any additional input?
So that recommendation just changed from your initial recommendation, right?
I don't think
No.
so.
No.
No,
Okay.
so the where there's a physical space or separation and mullion, large 10-inch mullion space between 2 windows, that would be plaster and it would be flush with the face of the building and the same color as the building. But that recessed depth apparently varies somewhat from different conditions.
So in an area like this where there's a separation, right?
Yes.
That would be the plastered area.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then on,
Seems to be what they're showing.
That's existing.
but then in locations like this,
No,
this would be an integrated unit. That is flush, that is built-in flush, similar to the historic depth of the windows. That's correct. And that would be one solid piece with 2 windows. That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we need to provide any input regarding the medallion?
I was just going to bring that up. I think
Yeah.
Well, okay. Okay.
Reopen.
Are there any
Oh,
photos
yes.
of-
So Martina, if you zoom in on the windows over the arch,
like these?
yeah.
Okay.
So that the post in between those 2 windows, that's plaster, correct? And it's flush with the wall face.
Is it? Is that the existing condition?
From the historic photos, I think it varies, but that was what we had talked about doing when we were on site and we were all kind of looking at that in agreement.
Okay, so those 4 windows
So
that,
those are 2 separate units that have a site fabricated plaster mullion between them that's flush with the exterior face of the stucco.
okay, so basically those windows there, those 4 windows and the 2 to the left basically are a similar condition except for the width of that space between.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that's.
And so that application is consistent throughout just this south facade, or Al, you meant to stay there, or where, I mean,
There are some other examples on the parking lot side where
Okay.
that condition
I
exists.
guess what's hard is I don't have an existing picture to look at what we're talking about. Maybe we can come back to this to finalize it. Maybe we should move to the other items and we can work on it.
Yeah, generally those mullions between are all flush with it and flush with the face of the building.
Right.
Yeah, Martina, on Google Earth, you can see all.
Okay, let's pull it
Yeah.
up.
And while you're looking at that, the medallion, George.
Yeah, so because it's a renovation, I respectfully disagree with the person who spoke about it being a painted medallion. I really think for not only an interesting look but also for, absolute longevity, that tile should be the required material for that mural art in public places piece that's on the face of the hotel.
Well, ultimately, if it's going to be an art and public place piece, it's going to go through the Arts Commission. So
Right.
What if we suggest that the Arts Commission consider
That it's tile.
a tile medallion to be determined?
That's fine. I mean, there's plenty of examples of them all over town. So, yeah, that's fine. I just want to
Okay.
reiterate that so we don't have something that's going to have to be worked on every year.
Martina, is there anything else you think we need to weigh in on?
I don't think there were any other outstanding discussions. That I can think of.
Oh, well, we need to discuss this. The variance for the spire. How do the fellow commissioners feel about that? I mean, right now, Martina, the tower or the cupola itself exceeds the 30 something,
24-foot height.
24-foot height, right? As does a lot of the building.
Mhm.
Correct.
So this would be a requested variance. Do the other commissioners feel as though the findings for the variance as outlined in the staff report, they agree with those?
I do because, the original, when it was originally built, that's what was up there. It wasn't that sign, the big rooftop sign came at a later date. And I think that having that detail, it's like a lot of the other architectural details that we've been discussing, adds a value to the renovation of the hotel itself. So I feel I can make the findings for the variance.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And
That's
Oh.
speed.
So are we?
oops, just a couple, the historic monitor.
Yes.
So as in terms of conditions of approval that we're adding in the historic monitor.
My list includes that the Art Commission consider tile for the art in public places, that a historic monitor be required are the 2 that I have right now. And then I think we'll craft the window condition as when we we'll go back. I can share the screen
Okay.
now just to make sure, because I just want to make sure, because there are a lot of different window applications and I'm not sure I understand exactly what is being proposed. So
So these, the
So-
ones you're looking at there those are boxed wood that are falling apart. And the intent is that, to recreate that exact look, but that instead of those being painted wood, they would be plastered to match the building.
okay, and so that continues here, then also
Wherever that condition,
on this, like these windows as well?
Yes.
Is that the
Yep.
same condition?
Yes.
These are separate, that would be this condition, and then, but these windows that have already been altered will be the ones that will be the set.
yes, that's correct.
The two windows with the integrated mullion
Yeah, yes.
system.
No.
No,
No.
no.
Everything will be,
Yeah, the elevations show that it's an actual separation with the pilaster mullion built out. The architect's elevations.
So these two towards the corner, you would basically replicate that along that entire elevation.
Mhm.
but then all of these windows, right? will
Yes.
Be that, yeah.
All of
these-
them.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Similar to what's we see in that north,
Somewhere.
northeast corner.
Martina, all of our comments about color and awnings and so forth, those are not. And the Juliet balcony, are those added as conditions?
Yes.
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 So those,
Yeah, so I can go through the list again. We have scheme one, the blue color scheme is the scheme. The Arts Commission will consider tile as part of the art and public places, a historic monitor. The existing window or the window systems that have the integrated wood mullion will be replaced with the plaster and replicating the existing mullion. And then the ones that don't have that will be replaced with the system. And then Juliet balcony will be installed above the front door.
Correct. But the Juliet balcony may have a cap on it if desired.
Juliet or faux Juliet balcony
Right.
will be installed above the front door.
Right. And was there some comments regarding the trash area and what was the final word on that?
later.
Oh, because that's to be determined. We don't know whether or not there's a right of way issue regarding that. And okay. All right.
And was there any condition about the landscaping? Was there any changes to it or?
Yeah, just the species, to try to replace the Raphiolepis species with something a little more
Okay.
period appropriate.
Okay, would somebody like to
Sorry,
make?
Chair, I just want to add real quick. I think one of the project applicant team just wanted to confirm also that the city and the applicant are on the same page. I know before she asked if that could be confirmed, so I just want to make sure that
Okay,
everyone's
I'll
on the
reopen.
same page.
I'll reopen the public hearing. Is there any particular question or?
I was just taking very good notes, so I was just going to assist you in making sure that we've got everything covered in the conditions. The valet awning, were we going to remove that?
I would recommend it.
I don't feel strongly one way or the other.
Like an umbrella would be plenty. It'll kind of clean up that side of the building too.
The takeout window, we're going to replace with wood.
Yes.
The retail, we're going to extend awnings out similar to what is found at Ocean and PCH. What
Yes.
else? I think that's it. Fire escape balcony, leaving alone. We're not going to cover
I'm
that.
not doing that.
Okay. Great. Oh, that's it.
Great. Okay, we have all that. Okay. I'll make a motion.
Or do we won't have any further comments from any of those?
Oh, yeah.
That part.
No, yeah, I forgot about that part. It seems like we're all making a group effort here and stuff. If anybody would like to make additional comments, Commissioner Dubin, would you like to?
Yeah, I'd just like to, first of all, thank the team, the applicant team for, really coming back with a highly detailed, comprehensive plan for the outside. We've been kind of waiting for this for a long time, going back to, the previous individual who was promising us that for years and never got to it. So I think you really listened to our comments from our previous meeting and really stepped up to the plate and really provided something so that we know what we're going to get when this renovation is complete. We've been, the community's been waiting a long time for this hotel to come back to life. And I think, when I look at what's been presented, I think generally the community is going to be very happy with what they see when this is finally done. So that's kind of my comment. I appreciate the effort that's gone into this, and I know I'm looking forward to seeing this brought back to life, and I know the community is too. So thank you. I'm going to approve.
Commissioner White.
Can't say it much better than that. But I think overall, the quality commitment that is here is exactly the right level, I think. There's a real passion on the part of the team to do a renovation, even though it's not technically a renovation. That's what we see. And to really be cooperative about every request. That's a good strategy. But it's, I think, going to be a great project. So let's get going.
Commissioner Goldman.
I agree, Laura, starting with your follow-up notes of our meeting, after our meeting, and following through on everything, and then standing there still taking notes. You've got everything. So great job. Thank you.
No, I agree as well. I think, the applicant team and the current owners were maybe taken a little bit aback by our level of input initially. And after talking to staff after our first meeting, I kind of got the general sense from them that maybe we were, pushing it a little bit beyond maybe what, we were technically allowed to do. But, some of us have been dealing with this project in this hotel for a really long time, and it's, finding the, original 1930 construction documents with those original details and elevations, I think was a great assistance to your, you guys as architects. And I really appreciate the extra effort you guys have made to try to incorporate as many of our suggestions as you have. And I just think it's ultimately going to make this project, so much better than it would have been if we had just hastily approved your initial plans. And I think hopefully the community appreciates it all. I'm sure they will when it's completed. So thank you. And if somebody would like to make a motion.
I move approval of, by motion, that we adopt resolution number 22-2304, approving design review 22-2304 and variance 24-0690, located at 425 South Coast Highway, and finding said action exempt from CEQA with the addition of the conditions to the resolution that have been outlined here tonight.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman?
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
And Chair Sadler?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Congratulations. There is a 2-week right of appeal to the city council if someone doesn't agree with that decision making.
Chair, staff would like to request a 3-minute recess to prepare for the next item.
Absolutely. Let's reconvene at about 5 to 9. People out there who are not part of the next item, if you would please move on or take it outside or take it across the street to the lumberyard. Thanks, Martina. We're back to 6.3. Okay, I will call the meeting back to order. And we had trailed this item because the applicant team was not here. So we're going to be moving back to item 6.3. And our principal planner, Anthony Vieira, will be presenting this item for us again.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Item 6.3 is a modification to a prior design review approval and variance approval for the remodel of an existing commercial building at 401 Glen Eyrie Street. Since staff did give the presentation to this item already, I'll ask the chair if you'd like me to give that presentation once more, or I can make myself available for questions. Staff is recommending approval of the project this evening.
Okay, do you believe that the applicant team is aware of your staff report and your presentation or sufficiently familiar with it that they don't need to see it again, or they don't need to see it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll, at this point, open the public hearing. If the applicant team would like to come forward to the podium and explain the proposed project and perhaps be available to answer any questions we may have.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Tobin White, Principal Side Studio Architects. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for having us. I think what I'll do is something brief, but there is a design reason or an existing condition reason for the proposed changes that we're presenting today. And some of that is lightly outlined in the staff report, but if there are additional questions, we will be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Maybe in general, I guess that is a question that we have is, for example, why the proposed material change from what was initially proposed?
Correct, from the Swiss Pearl material to the smooth stucco. The primary reason is that Swiss Pearl is, when we originally specified it, we had understanding that we would have it stocked here in Colorado, and that did not turn out to be the case. So it would delay the project if we have to install Swiss Pearl for a lead time. Okay.
And I guess another general question would be, why you or the owners decided to move forward without getting approval from us when making that significant of a design change?
Sure, understood that it is a decision that ownership had to make once we started opening the exterior of the window of the facade, realizing we weren't going to get the material in time. We had to re-waterproof it. So the decision at that time was made to waterproof it, understanding that there's risks.
Okay, but you understand from our standpoint, the way that we could potentially look at this project is that this change has not been approved by us.
Correct.
And that to do so was, a pretty significant risk to the owners. There's always the potential that we may have had, or may have an issue with that, and that could cause a significant issue for you.
Yes, the owner can speak, but I can't speak for them. But we did have not long discussions. I would say, I think the general gist is that construction goes really fast. And when you find out that something that you were expecting to happen doesn't go the way you plan, you got to make a quick decision. And so I will say, to Anthony's credit, he helped assisted with us in getting this to the spot we're at right now very quickly. And for that, we're pretty grateful. So yes, we understand that there was risks made, but we kind of had to make those risks because we had an open envelope. And so it was a little bit of a tricky situation.
I've seen, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've seen plenty of buildings under construction that have, plywood and then Tyvek and various waterproofing materials prior to the finish coats going on that have remained that way through weather and all kinds of other stuff without any issues. So I have to question, your assessment that you needed to waterproof the building by going ahead with full stucco treatment, when I don't think that was necessary. You could have waited till now to get approval on this. So I'm questioning that decision.
There's that. I think when construction started, it is difficult to stop construction and then say, we'll go get a 4-month approval and then we'll come back and start it. So there's probably a little bit of that going on too, but you guys aren't wrong. We understand the risk. It is a risk, but it's one that was made.
Was it discussed with Anthony or anyone else in the city at the time of the discovery? You'd mentioned you'd
Yes.
work with.
Yeah, we did have a preliminary phone call with Anthony, and it's not like we didn't understand that that wasn't the approved material and you guys were suddenly going to allow it. So I think Anthony we got original feedback from him. Our hope was that we would be able to go back into building plan check and go through that process, being routed to planning for approval. And or go through an administrative design review at that point, not having to come here to full planning commission. The one item that did seem to be discretionary that was a little bit of a surprise to us was the material change too. But that was Anthony, he met with his leadership team, and that was the decision they made, that item specifically would probably have triggered this public hearing. So that's why we are here.
Other than this material change, these other proposed changes, have they all been done as well?
I can look at our list here. Some of the framing was already underway. So like the ribbon extents, that one we can talk about. The metal panels on the north elevation, that's on the deck side. Those haven't been done yet. And I think if you'd like, I can speak in a little bit more detail to each of the reasons why we're doing those. So I'll start with the, would that be okay?
Yeah, no, you have 5 minutes.
Sure. She reset my thing. I'll go quick. Where we're changing the ribbon. So the ribbon on Glen Eyrie and the north elevation, that ribbon stays as it is. And the ribbon, I mean, is the parapet piece on top that currently houses antennas, not over the whole extent of the building, but over a portion of it. And then on the alley facing side of the elevation, if you can go to that one, it's the next page, I think, Anthony. Right there. So this elevation actually sort of triggered one of the changes, is that little box above. If you go in that alley, you'll see there's an existing box there. The antenna existing drawings that we have on record from our lease with the tenant show those antennas being the same size as the rest of the antennas on site. Once we started construction, we realized they weren't. So that little box would not be the same depth or width as the rest of the ribbon. So we're suddenly faced with a design change of like, do we go back and say we want to make the ribbon bigger everywhere so that it helps with it? Or do we have this weird thing that's bigger than the rest of the ribbon? And at that point, we did come up with a solution that we thought made a lot of sense, was to eliminate the ribbon on the alley and the ocean facing elevations. And the second piece of that is that the ownership is in favor of reducing the space that future antennas or antenna companies could expand into or modify their leases to grow into. So having more parapet with open framing on those two elevations would just give them an opportunity to be able to come back and renegotiate their leases or however that works. So eliminating that was one of the other factors too, is we're really tight now to the area where there is primarily antennas, not just giving space for future antennas to come in. And then the metal panels on the front, that's on the north deck elevation. The similar when we started demolition, that little strip above that second floor windows, the width of that ended up being less deep than initially anticipated once we opened up the facade. And so that strip really became too small to properly house those metal panels, which require attachments on top and bottom, and it would have been funky. So we would have ended up eliminating them there, and then we would have had a middle strip with those laser cut panels. We felt like it would be a cleaner detail to use the dark bronze colored aluminum panels across that whole elevation.
Was there a reason you also eliminated the art in public places piece in favor of the in lieu of fee?
I don't know if that was ever like a full condition. I don't think it got removed per se. But I think in the last meeting we met that it was agreed that both options were still on the table. So there wasn't a specific reason, if I recall. But that fee, I think, was processed.
And Anthony, that's typically the case, right? I mean, if there's an art in public places requirement, it's never forced upon somebody that they have to do that in lieu of doing the in lieu fee. They basically always have that option.
That is correct, Chair. So the way the code reads, if the project requires art in public places compliance, the applicant then has the option to either commission a public art piece for the site or contribute to the in lieu fee fund.
Okay, so even if somebody publicly states, hey, it's our plan to do a piece, they can later change their mind and just pay into the fund.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any other additional questions for the applicant?
I think actually it's probably a better question for Anthony. It's about the cell equipment.
That's fine, and also, I'm looking to you guys, because you guys spent the time on the subcommittee, dealing with this as well. So it seems like you're a little bit more in tune to, changes that you requested later on. And if you feel what's occurred here has taken away from that or not, but go ahead and with your cell question
But
also.
we'll wait for the comments.
Okay.
on that. But then should I ask questions
Sure.
of Anthony? Anthony, with the cell equipment, one of the reasons that the applicant is suggesting the removal of the ribbon band at the parapet line is because that would discourage, the removal would discourage cell expansion. I don't see what that has to do with it. It's that the cell companies can come in and expand 10% or whatever they're very specific. We just went through this. We discussed this recently. So I don't see how actually opening it up is a deterrent. I don't see what that has to do with it.
Yes, great question, Commissioner Whiten. So for wireless facility modifications that meet certain federal guidelines and are quote unquote eligible facilities requests, the city has very limited authority to regulate those types of projects. And if they meet federally prescribed criteria, the city shall approve those projects. What the applicant is referring to is something that's a private matter, a lease agreement. And perhaps there is more authority as a landlord to discourage future modifications that the city wouldn't have similar authority to deny such applications.
So to kind of further up on that, so it would always be the building owners, at the building owner's discretion, even if the wireless provider wanted to expand, that they would have to enter into a private lease agreement with the building owner to expand that. They couldn't just arbitrarily expand their footprint on a building without the building owner's consent.
Yes, I mean, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Anthony, I mean, are you talking about facilities in the public right of way versus on private buildings?
No,
on private
the existing facility on a private building.
Right. So as Anthony was saying, that would be between the landlord and the tenant, and what you're saying is right. I mean,
Right. So this leaseholder who's I believe paying for these building modifications by changing their proposal in terms of building modifications, that may somewhat limit the landlord from agreeing to an expansion because there wouldn't be the space there to do it because of their design. Is that?
That's not what I heard you say.
If I can add a little color too, is there's currently two tenants there, Verizon and Sprint. Sprint, they backed out of their lease. So half of the building suddenly became open for us to eliminate that ribbon, which is essentially what came about. Plus on the alley side, that rib one being bigger, from our perspective, it makes sense. The building no longer has capacity to renegotiate with Sprint. It would be gone and there's no new tenant agreement.
So it's essentially, it's lost revenue. Is it lost revenue? I guess that's a question. Is it lost?
It's lost revenue, yeah.
Yeah. And you're okay making the modification
It's
that,
preferred by the ownership, yeah.
okay, not to have the revenue, so you don't have the antennas. Is that
Correct.
the logic?
Yeah.
On the parking lot side, there was some kind of an awning or something over the where the ATM was, and that's been removed and from the plan, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And the reason for that?
There's a lot of complicated framing on the underside of that little space. And I think that is probably one where it started to become overly cumbersome to have to frame out and build that on. And we would have been redoing a lot of structure to the existing condition. Our sense was it was less valuable to the project, and the canopies on Glen Eyrie and the canopy on the deck elevation, we think have much more impact than that north, the alley side elevation. So we certainly wanted to keep those.
Okay, any additional questions for the applicant team? Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff?
No.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Where'd they all go? No, you may speak as well.
Hi, my name is Leslie Gentile. I'm with Farmers Emergence Bank. And, the team has done a great job trying to, in real time, fix problems with this building that have riddled the project with delays and costs. We've had abatement issues that you would not believe, structural issues, elements uncovering, the way the old windows used to be framed. We've had to reframe a lot of the old openings that we didn't know were there. So it's been a constant battle to preserve the intent of the design and to keep the project moving. The Swiss Pearl was not a choice we made easily. We worked for several months to try and find an alternate solution, and could not find one that was comparable to the Swiss Pearl, which would have to come from Europe. So it was a non-starter for that material. Tobin's done a great job to try and keep everything moving and keep the design intact. And the bank opened in February. We're very pleased. Everything's going great. And we just would really like to just finish this project. So I thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and go to commissioner comments.
I guess I'll start. I'm prepared to approve it. Probably like everybody here, don't like how we got here. But I look at what do we do from here as a practical matter. And I think if we were to punitively not approve, the cost is probably significant. The building, I actually went by it about a few days, I don't remember, recently, and thinking, wow, that's almost done. I think in the fact that you guys, and I asked the question specifically that, if you'd been doing this and not coordinating with Anthony and in real time letting him know what was going on, I would feel differently, but I value your judgment. I value that you put this forward. Like I said, I don't like the way we got here, but I don't feel the need to punitively stop or not approve the project. So I would support.
Commissioner Whiten?
Well, I find it a very frustrating situation. I thought the improvements that you presented to us and what we approved, was just a remarkable transformation of a real carbuncle of a building. And this, to me, is certainly not that. I think we as a city, and we do have a joint meeting with City Council soon. This is an issue that's happened before where basically people go ahead and make changes, whatever the reason is, but they're not approved changes. And we could say, no, no, we don't accept this. You know, it's a risk as you acknowledge. I think we need to change our process somehow. And if these things are not, I don't know how to do that. That would be a legal, kind of a legal question, but there should be some provision that prevents this from happening, because it happens. This isn't the only example where people just go ahead and make changes. It's a little bit of a mockery of the process when you know, I was really shocked when I went out there, and there it is. The whole west side is essentially done, as is the south side. And I was just going to go look for a sample. Well, the building is the sample, you know. So I don't want, I am not a punitive person by nature, but we spend a lot of time here trying to get things right. And each building is important, and I'm not, and you did a great job previously, but this is disappointing. I understand the reality of the situation. I think I can accept every change except the removal of the parapet on the west side. The south, you know, stripping that down, getting rid of the parapet, which is understood, the explanation is logical and acceptable. Removing the canopy, I don't think is a big impact. I think losing the laser cut metal panels on the north side on the terrace is a huge loss. And the architect explained that it's not actually physically possible to install the metal laser cut panels, if I understand that correctly. So it doesn't make any sense just to have one strip without having both strips. So I guess the proposal that you're making there is fine. On the Glenary side, the wrap of the laser panel on that end is fine. Creating the vertical connection at the stair is fine with windows. But when I look, and I walked and I drove very specifically to look at the west elevation, at the lack of any molding or finish at the top of that building, it's a real storage unit looking situation, and you can see it. That's right downtown. So that's the one thing that I you know, am having difficulty swallowing. But given the reality of the situation, I can accept the other changes.
Just real quick, Chair, just to address Commissioner Nguyen's comment, to the extent that it's discovered that there's unpermitted work going on, that's something that right now, you know, both the city's code enforcement building team as well as the city attorney's office can address, to the extent that somebody is building without any sort of permits. And to the extent, are there ways to improve that? You know, there's certainly discussion for that, but I do just want to also let you know that that can be addressed now if it's found and brought to our attention.
Well, it has been brought to our attention. The city knows this has happened. So did code enforcement go out and make a visit? You know, I mean, why wouldn't they have?
Complaint driven, nobody complained.
Commissioner Whiten, to answer your question, perhaps, city staff became aware of this change in the field only this week, and therefore we haven't had an opportunity to do any type of a follow-up, and we also couldn't predict what the outcome of this hearing may have done to
So
the.
is-
You only knew
is-
this week?
Yeah, so is that inconsistent? Because that was specifically the question that I asked the architect.
I believe what the applicant was referring to is discussions that we had about a proposed material change, but staff was not aware that the smooth coat stucco finish was installed in the field.
Oh.
And so I guess we would need to reopen the hearing and find out when that construction actually started.
Well, doesn't really matter.
I know, but I don't know.
Chair, I do want to say that, and I understand there's a human aspect to this. And for informational purposes, you're more than welcome to ask these kind of questions, but again, for purposes of approving or denying the project tonight, it is what's before you in the application. And to the extent that what is being approved tonight is different than what is ultimately currently standing, that's a future problem for the applicant. But for you guys tonight, I understand the frustration of the reality, but I also just want to remind you that we are, focused on the application, the code, the findings, the evidence in the record as to the project. And what is currently existing is not necessarily within the purview of the commission, and that would be a code issue that would have to be addressed.
I mean, I think what you're saying is we can deny for one reason, but we can't deny for another.
You could deny if you couldn't make any of the necessary findings that you're required to make, but you couldn't deny for what you're saying for punitive nature.
Right.
But if you couldn't make any of the findings and there's substantial evidence in the record to support that, including facts, then yes.
Okay, but another question. So have the inspectors been out to, who approved the detail for this? It's just being done on the fly. How is that?
Where was the heritage inspector?
Correct. Monitor.
If I may, as Anthony stated, the request of can we do this at this time was not brought to staff.
Yeah.
So what Anthony stated is correct, is that staff was not aware that this change was occurring. What staff has been doing the last few weeks is evaluating the request and packaging what is before you this evening, the staff report, the attachments, the plans, et cetera.
Right.
That's the extent of the knowledge that staff had during the preparation of the item. And so during Anthony's inspection this week, he noticed that it was already, parts of it were installed. He then notified the applicant, made them aware that this change was not approved. In fact, this change was being heard this week by the commission. And so to Anthony's point, that's the extent of the knowledge that staff had this week.
I understand that, but this is a question about the city process, not to belabor this. But don't we have inspectors that go out and periodically inspect in construction?
Our inspectors inspect based on inspections that are called for their review in the field. So for example, if there's a framing inspection that is called, they will go to the site and inspect the site based on that request for that area of the project.
Yeah, okay. So it's as requested.
They would have had to request, the process of doing a stucco finish is something that it's also, the preparation for that, the brown coat, and then the inspectors would have had to go out for all of that stuff. So they would have, I assume, noticed that there was some kind of material change going on at that time.
Commissioner Dubin, you're correct. And that's in the event that an inspection is called. And I don't know, and that would be a question for the applicant and the team, if they called for an inspection on that brown coat. I don't know. We don't have that information. But what you see in the field does not result in staff having inspected what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be a question for the applicant and their team. But again, as legal counsel has stated, what is before you this evening is this new material. In reviewing material in light of what's been installed, the commission does have the option. This is a discretionary approval this evening to either go with staff recommendation based on this alternative material, or request that the applicant go back and review what was approved previously and come back with a modified material that's acceptable to the commission.
It's setting a precedent. This is a precedent-setting situation.
Yeah.
This is one of those, we're going to do it and ask forgiveness later kind of thing. And, I'm looking at, and maybe we can reopen the public hearing so I can ask a question if that's okay, Chair.
I'll reopen the public hearing.
So, I'm looking at the concept elevations of what you are doing now. On the parking lot side,
Just a question for the architect.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could come up to the podium, please.
On the parking lot, side, it looks like you turn the corner with the ribbon and then it stops. I'm looking at. this.
Yeah, I think to note too is on the staff report, to answer the question, just I want to clarify on the staff report, it shows when we originally met with Planning Commission, it was a very white building, if you recall, and we did not have metal panels, the laser cut metal panels that wrapped Glen into the alley. Does that make sense? And then when we had the subcommittee meeting with you, we added those panels and we changed the color. Just so all the commission is clear, the originally approved elevations are what's in there, not the subcommittee approved elevation. So the new, the elevations we're presenting you today are much closer to the subcommittee approved elevations. I just want to put that note out there to say.
Okay, but my question is, it looks like the ribbon turns the corner.
It turns, it follows the metal panels, and then it dies at the termination of where the metal panels
So
are. We wanted to make that
my
line.
question to you, when I look at the west elevation, like, because we're, dealing with the desire for articulation and whatever in a lot of, whether it's a remodel or new construction. And, I'm just making a observation / proposal that why would you not continue the ribbon down this whole site and then turn the corner and stop like it is on the other end as kind of a book matched situation that would add a little articulation to that west elevation?
Yeah, I could see that. I think it's what we spoke about earlier is that the Sprint antennas were removed from that elevation. And so there was a desire to also remove the ribbon at that length.
I'm just talking, regardless of what telecoms are doing on the roof, I'm just looking at.
Yeah, like match that side. And then on the alley side, we'd have the ribbon wrapping and kind of dying in the same spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the alley side backs onto the parking structure, which actually may be increased in height. So that's a dark area. Not
Pretty
many
dark.
people, having a look at your elevation. This elevation, as I said earlier, you can see it from the sidewalk and you can see it from the street. And so, that I think that's.
I mean, that would be my
After
own.
all, after all this discussion, that's the only thing that I think, although you've heard what we had to say, but just keeping it focused on this proposal tonight. I said it earlier, the ribbon, I think that ribbon should come back.
On that
Just
west
as George
elevation.
is saying the same thing.
I mean, when I look at the north elevation with the replacement of the laser cut with the bronze, that's fine. I think it looks okay. I don't have a big issue with that, but I think, based on, the fact that this project has moved forward without approval of the change of material, that, I don't think re-adding that ribbon along the west elevation and turning the corner with it, as a compromise for what you've already done, I think, that would at least make me feel better about moving forward.
I'm not sure if I'm following you. So this elevation here where you're talking about this,
Extended, this is what was there.
right,
This require them to put that back.
right, but not turning the corner around to the Glen Airy side.
I think Tobin is saying he wants to do that. We should ask.
So like right now,
Yeah, I think.
It would mimic.
do it like this, or this element that would go all the way along the west elevation
And
and
then
then
turn
wrap around this corner
Just
somewhat
to match.
to match what's happening on the other side.
Yeah, and they don't have to they widen this to give something back. They can just go, they don't need it.
That has not been done.
No.
Okay.
As far as.
All right, well, okay, I guess, are you done with your comments? Okay. I guess we're done with our questions, but, yeah, so I'll just go to my comments. So.
Could I
Sure.
ask one more question? This is a question for the attorney. Is this, approving this, is this a precedent-setting situation?
So while, the goal is to be obviously consistent with every single project, and that's why there are the findings in the code, right? So whether it's design review, it's the same findings. If it's variance, CUP, right, the same findings. But a commission is not bound by the prior decisions it makes. Every single project has to look at individually, has to analyze the facts, has to analyze evidence, has to analyze the plans, and it has to apply the findings or the facts to those findings. And if it can make the findings, it can approve it, or if it can't make the findings, it can deny it. And so I just want to be careful to use the term precedent just loosely.
I'm thinking more like, giving the incentive to other, other people to go ahead and do the same thing. And we could say, oh, we could plead special circumstances, but what are the special circumstances?
Sure. So from a lay standard of, is this precedent setting in terms of, could somebody see this and say, oh, well, if I just begin constructing, nothing's going to happen? I don't know if it's precedent setting, but but from a legal standard, it isn't.
Yeah.
But I also just want to say that, again, in the event that there is unpermitted building happening, we have the ability to stop it. And I think had the city had sufficient notice of this, we could have stopped this before it got to the level. So I don't want to say it's precedent setting, because we have the ability to stop projects when we're aware that there's unpermitted projects happening. But from a lay, right, legally not precedent setting, but I understand what you're getting at. And yes.
Anybody watching?
Okay. Okay. I closed the public hearing. You could go ahead and have a seat. We're done with it.
Can we make one comment, or is that not?
Okay, I'll reopen the public hearing.
Thank you. I want to clarify one thing too. The walls on the east and the south that face the alley and face sort of more ocean facing, those have always been stucco. So in terms of material change, the only one that is actually a material change is on Glenary, and that's where we would go from the Swiss pearl to the smooth stucco, just as a point of clarification. And yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. All right. Close the public hearing. Okay. So the way I look at this is, pretend we're not where we're at. Pretend that you're coming in here with a request for a modification to your previous design review approval. I'm looking at these proposed changes and what would I think about them, and would I be in favor of them? And, not penalize you because we're in the situation where we are, but on the other hand, not give you extra credit or leeway because we're in the situation we are and things have been done without that approval. So with that said, I look at some of the proposed material changes, the changes and the building surface material, the window change that happens on the Glenary elevation. Actually, I like and provides a little bit more variance to that facade. I give credit to Commissioner Dubin and Whiten for taking the time to be on a subcommittee. And I think the input that they gave and the changes that came out of that were positive. And because of that, I want to somewhat defer to some of their input here. So, I agree that the most important elevations are the east and the north elevation. This west elevation, I would say, is not as important, but still, as been stated by other commissioners, it is visible and quite visible because it's elevated from Coast Highway below. And so I would agree with their suggestion that that elevation return as much as, return to what the original proposal there, and that ribbon along there continue, and that I believe their suggestion to wrap that parapet ribbon around to the Glen Airy parking garage side would be a nice kind of touch to help that, rather bland and stark elevation a little bit with some articulation. I'm okay with the proposal to remove the awning over that area. So that's my feeling, and it feels as though, that's reasonable. However, I hope that, and I don't believe legally, as is stated, that this isn't legally precedent setting. I just hope that if anybody is watching this, they understand how, unfortunate a position that puts us in here. And really, shouldn't happen. I previously was on the design review board dealing with more, residential projects. And we would see this type of situation happen more frequently. And it was particularly, annoying because, in those situations, you've got a lot of back and forth between neighbors agreeing and finally coming to a compromise on a design that both sides could agree with. And then when one party then goes off and violates that and does something unpermitted and unapproved, and would come back in and say, "Oh, but how hard it's going to be for me to change this now." It was like, sorry, but that's tough. So that would be my feeling on this. And so really I don't know, if the fact that side of the wall has been completely stuccoed, I don't know if that adding on that extra wall ribbon and framing is a problem or not. Whatever, you guys are going to have to deal with it. And that's my feeling.
Well, I'll go next. I concur with Chair Sadler on that. I think that, I could live with the changes that are proposed in this modification. But I would only be able to approve it if you added back the ribbon on the west elevation and have it turn the corner to sort of book match what's happening on the Glen Airy side. So if that would be agreeable, then I would be able to approve the modifications.
Returning to the original elevation, not keeping the wider panel.
Right.
Yeah, so reverting to the approved elevation.
Right. Do you understand what we're asking for? Okay. The whole west elevation, the elevations that's facing Coast Highway, returning to what was originally proposed. That right now you've expanded the side pop out to where it extends. It's this, I don't know if you could bring up that elevation, Anthony. Here it is, this elevation here, this is, right. So Anthony's basically showing it, other than the fact that we're asking that that side panel that goes right up to the edge of the window, that gets reduced back to what it was before.
So it's the original elevation.
Right. So yeah, that blue section gets removed. The red ribbon, top ribbon, goes all the way along this elevation, turns the corner towards the garage, just as Anthony is showing there. So I'll reopen the public hearing and ask whether or not you're willing to accept that condition of approval. And I would suggest that you do.
I want to say something real quick. I appreciate where you're coming from, and I understand. We would like to discuss some alternates to adding articulation that would not involve framing and invasive work to the tenants that have been on that second floor suffering through this for the past year. So if there might be another way to approach it, we'd also prefer if we could spend the money where people actually can appreciate what we've done to this building. And I don't know if you remember what it used to look like,
We do.
but it's a significant improvement in proportions, in materials, and general architecture articulation. So I'm hopeful that we can come to some other agreement that doesn't make us go back.
Well, you're definitely
if
going to
it-
go back if you don't agree to what we're,
And I mean,
I mean, the whole
we'd like
point,
to move
the whole,
forward.
the whole point was that you expressed this immediacy of, why we got here, because you had to move forward without getting approved on it. And now we're not going to conditionally approve changes that we don't, that we outlined a condition of approval here that is relatively straightforward. To me, does not seem to be that significant of a change framing wise, and you could be conditionally approved here tonight. If you decide not to accept what we're proposing here tonight, you're talking about having to revise plans, having to get back on the schedule, having to come back in, and then taking a roll of the dice whether or not we're going to even like what you're proposing then, which could extend this out for months. If you're willing to go that route instead of just,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if it's your option, here's your options. You can ask us to vote here tonight on what you're proposing, which it doesn't sound like you have a consensus of approval here. So you could ask for a vote for approval or denial here tonight. Or you can do what we're requesting, or you can ask for a continuance to either a date certain or a date uncertain, or you could table the whole project. Those are your options.
Okay, I wanted to just understand if there was a concern about articulation on that west elevation, is there another way that we can achieve that? The reason we have that pop out in the beginning and originally anyway is because of the cell sites, which we no longer have half of. So is there another way to articulate that elevation without having to add this empty box on the side of the building?
There
that
might be,
serves no purpose?
but we're not going to have a design charrette here tonight and go through that and figure it out for you. I mean, that's you and your design team's
Mhm.
job, really. And again, you come in with something different, oh, hey, we came up with this concept instead. Here's some way that we thought we could articulate that. And we look at it and we go, no, we hate that. Then what?
Could I ask a question? Because it's not visible from the public. You just said half of your cell sites are gone from the elevation. So there's still cell
Yes.
up there, here.
Yes. In the
Exposed.
primary pop out on the west side, that's wider.
So we'd be seeing the exposed cell
Well, no.
equipment
No,
That's why that box,
come to the,
when we terminated it, that box has to grow to capture the existing cells that are in there. Does
yeah,
that make
but
sense?
if I understand what's been said tonight, you still have Verizon.
In
up there.
that corner to the window, basically.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they extend across outside of that box at some future date?
They'd love to.
Okay,
Their lease ends at that window.
Yeah, it ends there, but if we remove the box, there's no longer any capacity without a lot of new construction work to extend. Does that make sense?
yeah, but couldn't they just attach them to the side of the building?
I don't know if that gets approved. Yeah.
You might approve it.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've heard the options, so.
Right. Ball's in your court.
I think we just want to make one comment too, and I don't know if it affects the decision made tonight, but to speak to the fact that we've been doing construction sort of like, you know, whatever without approval, I will note that there's been inspectors on site and their stance, they have actually continued to allow us to move forward with inspections as long as our plans were in the city going through approval process. So I'm going to say that it didn't seem relevant. It seems highly relevant at this point. So inspections have continued to move forward on site. And so this is like a little bit of a shock to us. I think we're kind of expecting to close. I understand that it's still discretionary and you guys have the right to, you know, change it or whatever, but that's the actual case is there's inspections on site that are continuing to move forward because plans are already in the city.
That makes no sense to me at all.
Understood.
You know, it's, you know, if it's a fault of the inspector of not understanding the material change, then that's something that needs to be discussed in the building department and not here.
Right. Continue it, ask for a vote.
So you want us to remove the vertical pop out and continue the horizontal on the west and south elevations?
Yes, as Anthony, can you show that again? Continuing the red portion all the way along there, removing the blue portion.
Although I thought what I heard was you needed to widen that corner piece because there is equipment there.
Above?
But it would be captured by the red band continuing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's,
It proportionally looked better to bring it down vertically than to cut it off at the window and have a little, you know, leg over.
I think that looks weird to have that pop out go right up against the window.
Yeah, I concur with that.
So what we're asking, keep add the red, keep the red all the way across,
Okay, the
remove the
parapet.
blue,
Mhm.
wrap it around the corner there, add that red portion.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
Just,
And everything else that's been presented is acceptable?
yes.
Okay. I think that's good. Yep. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Anthony, you're clear on that, right?
Yes, Chair.
Okay,
Essentially, that parapet ribbon would match the February 2023 approved plans along those two elevations per the markups that were shown on the screen this evening.
well, it's a little bit different on this,
south
on
hill.
the south from what it was originally, because remember, originally it was.
Yes.
All the way across.
Thanks for that correction. The
And-
south elevation
Right.
does change.
Which even as it's going to be, you know, it's got that weird little square pop out that doesn't meet the depth of, you know, but I'm willing to let that go.
That one box is existing.
Right, but apparently you figured that out later because it was not shown that way originally, right?
Well, you're correct that we originally had the bands connected. So you're
Right.
correct to say it's not.
Chair, if we can have him come to the podium, please.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No problem.
Reopen the public
Yes,
hearing.
yeah, thank you.
I don't know if I even
the-
closed it.
You're correct, Commissioner Sadler, or Chair Sadler, that it used to be connected because those antennas on the the as-built plans from the antenna companies were the same depth. Turns out they're not, so that's why we have that box here. So it wouldn't match the plans, Anthony, but this is sort of a new design that stops on the backside.
Okay. Okay, if you guys are willing to accept that changes, then it sounds like you may get a conditional approval here tonight. And to me, you know, I do engineering on buildings and it does not seem to be that hard to achieve, put it that way. But, okay,
I think considering the alternative, you're getting off pretty light.
will somebody make a motion to that effect?
By motion, I move that we adopt the resolution approving design review 24-0797 and finding the said action exempt from SEQA with the addition of the condition
Yes, no.
regarding the addition of the parapet wraparound on the west and south elevation.
And with the reduction in that third wall near the building corner that terminates down at the deck.
Right.
Yes.
I'll
Is-
second. Oh, second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin,
Yes.
and Chair Sadler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You are conditionally approved. All right, we'll be moving on to committee, commissioners, and staff reports, if there are any for us tonight.
No staff comments. I did provide my bi-weekly update on projects. That's in your email. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call this week.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Any commissioner input comments? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting on?
June 5th.
I move adjournment until our regular planning commission meeting on June 5th, 2024.
Is there a second? Roll call,
Commissioner Goldman,
please.
Commissioner Goldman. Yes. Commissioner Whiten,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin.
Yes.
And Chair Sadler.
Yes,
Thank you.
we are officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Anthony, for hanging out when you probably shouldn't have had.